Thank you. We're going to start the meeting now, so you bring your conversations to a close. We're going to start the meeting.
No, I just started it. Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, we're going to call a meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of June 13th, 2023. We'll have the roll call, and then I ask everyone to please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. Please call the roll.
Hathaway.
Present.
Palmer.
Present.
Flintoff. Present. Peugeot.
Present.
Carey.
Present.
Noel. Absent. Riser. Absent. We have quorum.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this brings us to adoption of the agenda. I have one correction I would like to offer. It was brought to my attention that the motion for item G7, which is in the consent agenda, has the wrong fund number. So I would like to correct that motion to change the number of the fund to 101-530-828.
What is that for?
That's for the recycling newsletter.
Oh, and what is the number you're giving us?
Noted.
So in the motion, if you look at that agenda item, there's a model motion, and that is, it offers a number for a fund, an account number. And it was pointed out to me that that number is not the correct, the one that's in the agenda item is not correct, so I would like to correct it.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay, are there any other proposed changes to the agenda?
Yes, I just got here, John Reiser. I will wait, Jillian.
You're not here until you. Okay, so if we could pull G2, I just have a question about that comment. What was the other?
G2 is the
Oh, I'm sorry.
authorization of MTA annual dues.
Yep, and then G5 is Christy Aiken, educational reimbursement. I'll explain when we get there. And that's it for those two.
Okay, so those would be moved to new business.
Oh,
Is that what you're proposing?
yeah.
Moving them
sure,
from the
sorry.
consent agenda
Consent, right, move from consent agenda to
to new
new
business.
business.
Okay, are there any other?
Oh, at the top of new business, please, because these are short items and I don't want to make Christy wait.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, we would, I think put them before the presentation. Trustee Riser.
Yeah, John Reiser, my apologies, I was running late from work. I would like to take from new business, K1 and K2, and move them up to consent. K1 is a clarification of the 2013 SAD. K2 is the amendments to the Scio Township Personnel Handbook that have been vetted by council and discussed at management. And I think I've read them and I think we're ready to vote on those under consent.
Okay. Trustee Brazeau, you mentioned earlier that you had a proposed change to the agenda.
I do. I'd like to add one item to the agenda in regards to someone taking care and supporting statutes, but
Ordinance enforcement.
ordinance enforcement.
We can't hear.
Yeah, it's unclear to me.
Hey, Mark.
We can't hear Mr. Hathaway.
Sorry. Okay, we'll speak a little louder. Sorry about that. We're not used to such a big group.
Yeah, we need a microphone maybe.
Yeah, no worries. I'd like to add something about in terms of our ordinance support.
Ordinance support.
Yeah, I'm not clear on the way it's been delegated nor its performance.
So you would like a discussion?
I'd like a discussion and then possible action for next meeting.
Okay, so that would go on to new business.
Yes,
Are you okay with adding that at the end of new business?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Are we gonna name that K5?
Ideally, it will not be a lengthy conversation.
So this would be adding item K5, ordinance enforcement
Yes, sure do.
discussion. Okay, any other changes to the agenda? Is someone prepared to move the agenda as
I would move
amended?
I would move the agenda as amended.
Okay, moved by Riser,
One second.
support by Carrie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The agenda is adopted. We have communications to the Board of Trustees.
All are noted here. We'll list the communications related to the fire department proposal later on in the agenda.
That brings us to public comment. This is a time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of the Board of Trustees. However, I should note that those who are here to speak on the subject of the Fire Protection Special Assessment District, there's a public hearing specifically for that purpose later in the agenda. So if you are here to speak on that, please wait until the public hearing. And you'll have time to comment then. And actually, you'll have more time. We have during public comments, standard public comments, each person is entitled to 3 minutes. During public hearings, each person is entitled to 5 minutes to make their comment. Are there any people here who would like to speak during public comment on something other than the Township SAD?
Hello, my name is David Spicer, Scio Township resident. And I would like to talk about the last meeting on the Heritage Woods PUD. I would like to thank Kathy, who's not here tonight, Jessica and Jillian for standing up for the Scio Township Master Plan in our open space. John, I wish that you would have stood up for my Lieber. Mark, the property north of my property is under contract for over $100,000 an acre. Not the 89,000 that you said was a fair price for my property. Now, is that really good faith negotiations what the developers are doing? And Donna, you would think that the 5th generation of Dexter would want to keep open space for the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th and 10th generation of your family. And Will, you say you drove by the proposed property for the Heritage Woods and thought it would be a nice place for the development. Did you imagine in your mind the concrete on-site sewer system next to the road? You must have not seen all the open space either that the residents of Scio Township are trying to save. I'm so disappointed in John, Donna, Mark, and Will for not following the master plan. Please, in the future, take your children and or grandchildren down Marshall Road and point to the north and then to the south and show them what you did. I don't understand how the 4 of you got hypnotized by the Alan Green and Dan Johnson dog and pony show. Of the 4 trustees who was present and responsible, who was going to be responsible for the negotiations between the neighbors and the developers? Thank you.
Who else would like to speak during public comment? Please come on up.
My name's Kevin Jackson. I'm a resident of the Parkwood Condominium Association. Speaking on the Arbors Grove proposed development. The density of it does not conform with the character of that corridor. We have been steadfast in coming to the meeting since March of 2022. We are not opposed to reasonable development on that property. There have been over 30 additional engineering drawings pertaining to that development That development's land has not been sold. And we are very concerned with the amount of units that they want to place on that amount of land. I know you guys are under a lot of pressure, and it's not an envious job to be in unless you want to serve the public. When a development comes in and says they want to do A, B, C, D, and then the community says what they say in terms of trying to protect their interest, when the developer meets all the legal requirements, you're obligated to approve it. As a low-density spokesperson for our L group, I don't want to see you give this proposal variances that are against what the law states in order for them to jam 36 units into 3.89 buildable acres. Currently, there's about 4 to 5 units per acre in Scio Township. I would hate that this Board of Trustees would approve 9 units per acre on 3.89 buildable acres. Again, we're not opposed to development on that property. Reasonable development would be between 16 and maybe 20 units. And it would fit the character of that corridor. You would go from country to downtown Scio with no big elephant in the room with all that density on that piece of property. Again, you guys are between a rock and a hard place. There's a lot of issues you have to deal with. I appreciate you being who you are and running for these positions. But please listen to the citizenry who are in favor of the progress of Scio Township, but not at the density that this particular development at Arbors Grove is proposing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Who's next for public comment?
Good evening, Kathleen Brandt, the Scio resident. I wanted to talk about an item you just took off the consent agenda, and this is about educational reimbursement for Christy Aiken. As I was reading the agenda, especially the personnel handbook, I learned that Christy is an exempt employee, meaning she doesn't get overtime. She comes to these board meetings, spends her nights here, doesn't get compensated for it. I think that should be a major consideration for reimbursement of her educational request and potentially into the future beyond this one. I appreciate the effort she does for the township. On K4, which was GSCI, the lobbying firm, this item says that there will be an overview of things that this organization has done for us. I don't see any specifics in that agenda item. What exactly are they doing for us? What have they done for us? Because I don't know what the interaction has been with the board and this organization that was discussed in the past. And next, I want to ask if we as residents can get a status of what's going on with the trail roads development and the moving of Stabro Road. There's a great deal of interest in that. So can we get an update on that?
I can speak to that during the reports.
Okay, great, thanks. And also, I want to express to Dave Spicer some sympathy and regrets. He just gave a very good recap of that whole process. I think the most significant thing he said was all the residents that were opposed to that. And the same with Arbus Groves, as Mr. Jackson just said. There are lots of residents that are opposed to these projects. I have never seen a single resident come and pitch for these properties. So it really seems that you should pay attention to what Scio residents would like. We should be the input to the master plan. We should be the input to long-range development. Please consider that. You're not hearing a lot of voices from this township. Thank you very much.
Who else would like to speak during public comment?
Good evening, everyone. I'll try to talk a little bit louder so everyone can hear me. Oh, the microphone? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome to everyone who may be new here this evening, as well as those who come quite frequently. Also, welcome to Mrs. Parker, your first official meeting as township manager. Something that seems to be a recurring theme, and we've struggled with this for a couple of years now, is communication.
Ryan,
Does that like help a little bit more?
If you speak
Ryan?
right into the microphone.
Okay, like that.
yeah, you might just
Hold
want
him all the
to
way.
take it out,
Yeah.
carry
Just
it
hold it.
style, yeah.
Be an MC.
There you
Okay.
go.
Does that work a lot better?
It's not on.
Oh, wow.
It's not even on.
It says it's on.
It's not on.
Is it on mute? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, it was on mute, sorry. Okay, I'll try to talk a little bit louder too, sorry.
Turn up the volume.
Communication appears to be a recurring theme of the issue in the township. I understand we had to, of course, send out the legal notice with very specific language to meet the requirements of the law. We can work to also communicate what is the reasoning behind the legal notice and try to do that either at the same time or ideally let people know this is coming. It can help inform and sort of provide some of the answers that people have come to us looking for. Certainly there'll be questions, but we can try and stem some of those questions by educating the public up front. I am worried that our alarm system under K3 continues to be an issue. Hopefully the legal action that the township is going to take will be resolving that. Additionally, the statements of Mr. Burbano and the rest of the low density Parkwood folks, I'd really like to ask the board to take action with Carlisle Wortman to have the developer submit whatever their current plan is, whatever revision that is in a reasonable time frame, so that way you can take action on it, whatever action that might be. It's just not fair to have them wait over 15 months with constant revisions and constantly having this issue over their head. Also, additionally, if we ever have this large of a turnout again, or think we are, might be wise to use WISD or some other venue just to accommodate everyone. Just a thought. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ryan.
Anyone else would like to speak during public comment?
Larry Murray, Shady Oaks Drive. So I'm sorry, but I am going to talk to the fire issue that's on the agenda for tonight. I'm going to come back after, perhaps after the presentation, and have more comments, but I'm going to speak more generally here and more specifically then. To be clear, my comments, and I'm sure if other people speak tonight on the fire issue, it has nothing to do with the fire department itself. I think personally, the fire department is top notch. I know.
I suggest that you speak into the microphone.
Yeah.
All right, anyway, you got the point. Our fire department is top notch. The personnel are, as far as I know, I don't know them, but I'm told they're top notch as well. So none of these comments have to do with the fire department. It has to do with the proposal that I received a notice on about a week ago that is gonna effectively raise anyone in this room's taxes anywhere from ultimately $500 up to $1,500 a year. It deals with, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen, from what I've read, I haven't seen that you've done, you're given its due to put it in front of us today. So, it deals with a great amount of money, lots of things, but money is one of them. We can't discount that. And, it wasn't a short time ago, there was an error made in tax billing, and a fairly minor fraction of a mill that had to be collected a year later. And some of the comments regarding that were that, and the heads exploded over that here in this room, that people were going to be shocked when they got their next tax bill. And the impact of that was minimal compared to the impact of this proposal. Can you imagine next year when people hear from their escrow company that they're short hundreds of dollars, $1,000? That little tax bill thing a year ago pales in comparison. And I get this was brought forward by a committee, and that's great. The committee did its thing. They met they had a handful of meetings over a few months. But we also have a planning commission, a seasoned planning commission, who came forward last month with a recommendation for approval of the Baker Road senior community. They gave that its due, and there were some of you on the board that wanted to totally disregard and ignore the recommendations of the experienced planning commission and their recommendations. So it's give this that same due that you gave that process and that proposal. So my request is tonight, listen to the people that comment, read the letters if you have any, suspend going forward. Take the monies that I understand you put some monies or planning to put some monies towards pre-planning and pre-architecture. Take that money and hire a consultant to do this right. Find out what the people want. And let's not make this is a big deal. So please get it right the first time. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment? Do we have anyone participating remotely who would like to speak during public comment?
Yes, Jonathan, please go ahead.
Oh, man, I didn't want to go first. Anyhow, thanks anyway. One other common theme I've been hearing throughout the 2, 3, 4 years that I've been listening to these meetings is also something that I've heard from almost every speaker tonight, and that is, why do the residents take such low priority with certain members of the board? Why are residents' interests ignored or pushed aside when a developer shows up with a proposal, whether they're friendly or whatever the deal is? There's at least 2 individuals who don't take their job seriously and work much more closely with the developers and aid the developers and not the residents. Case in point, I've been waiting, trying, hoping that the township can help me force the Trailwoods developer to pick up the garbage that's on my property for well over a week now. I'm talking to you. Well, you're the ordinance officer, yet you refuse to do your job. You appointed that responsibility to our 30-year contractor who also has a slavering love of developers, Doug Lewan. Doug hasn't done anything. So he assigned it to his new guy and he hasn't done anything. And I've sent 7 emails and it's been a month, and 2 weeks ago, even Mark Brazel said, this is ridiculous. You don't get to enforce the rules for your friends. You have to enforce them for everyone in the township. That includes no special deals made by, you leaving a meeting to call Mr. Stolman to tell him he better get his application in or he's going to get charged more at taxpayer expense, mind you. It's nothing new. We've seen this favoring of developers and friends over residents for 30 years that I've been here. And Mr. Hathaway, you are just the latest in a long string of handoffs from Spalding Clark to Jack Knowles to you. You don't care about us. You're here for other reasons. It's disgusting. I've got garbage on my yard and I know you don't care. Thank you, Mark, for adding that to the agenda tonight. Unbelievable and shameful that this township can't enforce its own basic rules. And I'll go one further. Once you get someone to enforce these rules, go deal with the party barns first. I'll pick up my own garbage if you help the party barn families who have been screwed over by your lack of attention for so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Helene New, and following her is Benjamin Job. Helene?
Yes, Helene New. I live on Wood Grove Drive in Parkwood Condos. And I would just like to add my agreement with what my fellow resident Kevin Jackson had to say. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Helene.
Thank you. Benjamin Jaffe? Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to the community members of the Township Board. I will speak later on the fire issue, but I do want to make a note here that I've had trouble getting data or consistent data off of our website. And from what I've seen, I was able to review the fire station presentation, and it showed certain response times, and it showed how those response times were too long. But I actually looked at the fire department stats that are showed on the website. Those are different than the response times that are shown on the presentation. It's very hard to make a clear decision when you have two differing sets of data supposedly from the same entities. And I'd like to ask that be cleaned up to an extent so we can actually know what we're looking at, and so that we can have certain additional data too when we're discussing proposals such as this. One of those things that, and I'll bring it up at the fire, is they talk about 2 in, 2 out. It'd be nice to know how many times the fire department was affected by OSHA 2 in and 2 out, and not be able to make that mandate. I will save most of my fire comments for the fire public comment. But this is mostly a transparency issue and a data issue, which is for the public to be able to make thoughtful public comment. We need consistent data. And this isn't the only time that it's happened with our local municipalities. I know we're not Washtenaw County Road Commission, but we are part of it, and they do have a large base right near our Scio Township Hall. I've been told that my road has been graded before when my road's not graded. So I would just ask this board to look into those things and maybe audit itself and audit its departments to make sure that we are putting out consistent data to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you. Up next is Paula Gloverson, followed by Pam Boyd. Paula, go ahead.
Hi, this is Paula Gloverson, longtime resident of Scio. I want to comment on trail woods. Yes, we've had a drought for 3 weeks, but this has been an ongoing thing for about 4 years. I'm not quite as affected as other people, but they're in their contract. That was when we've been discussing the Stabler Road. They allowed them to have decreased distance from Arbor Point. And the dust, there's no attempt, whether it be trash, because I picked up a lot of trash out of the woods back there, but just because I walk in the woods. There's no attempt at trying to control the dust on the construction site. And it's not just Park Road dust, but it's dust from the actual construction. And my family lives in Arizona, and when they do construction there, because they don't get a lot of rain, they spray it down with water. I've gone 2 times to the environmental area, and they did send somebody out one time when Toll Brothers was there throwing trash in the creek. But we need to control the dust. It's a respiratory hazard, and it also coats everything. And so for the people living around there, and I'm sure when Park Road gets the gravel uplift and what should have been done over the last 10 years, we'd all appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Pam Boyd, go ahead. Go ahead.
There's a little bit of back voice, Christy. Pam Boyd, a Scio resident, Scio community newsletter. Joyce, welcome. And I'm putting a lot of my eggs in your basket. To the residents of Scio Township, this township hall has terrible acoustics. If you would like to listen to this recording, go to YouTube, Scio Community News. Resident Rob Pattinson records all of the meetings, and so you can hear it again. Scio Community News YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob Pattinson,
Rob Pattinson, Scio resident. Welcome, Joyce, as our new manager. Boy, have you got your work cut out for you. We'll be rooting for you. Thank you, Christy, for running Zoom tonight, and thank you, Mary Gillis, for the newsletter and the package. The assessor is getting an assistant today, and we've got a new IT guy. And the Parks Department now has a whole bunch of assistants. And the utilities now have a full-time admin. What don't we have? We don't have a single staff person for the finance department. We don't have a finance director. This has been going on for years now, and we've hired a lot of people the last several months, and we still don't have any support whatsoever for our finance team. When are we going to do something about that? Mark Rizzo, you said that was one of your high priorities when you came on. Could you please put that back at the top of the priority list and let's get that hammered on? And Joyce, I saw in your message in the newsletter that was one of your high priorities, and we will be depending on you to make that happen. Foster Swift in tonight's agenda packet has another bill for $11,550. And in April, it was $11,907.50. And so we're back to the $11,000 a month range for Foster Swift. And we got away from that a little bit when they stopped attending all of these meetings. Does that mean that Mike Homier is now attending these meetings on Zoom? Is Mike Homier on Zoom tonight?
no.
No.
Thank you. And can we please get a supervisor report? It's been months since we've got a comprehensive supervisor report. Can we make a manager report part of our monthly process as well, so that we know what's coming down the pike and what to prepare for? And one of the first things that needs to happen when we get a finance director is we need a forensic audit. It makes me wonder, why has there been so much resistance to getting a finance director? And that is, are some people worried about what will be found? And therefore, a forensic audit is the only answer to that, and that needs to be another high priority. And Mark, you added an item to the agenda tonight. I can answer part of the question for you, that Carlisle Wortman is our consultant with Doug Luan, who has failed as part of that enforcement. There was Ralph, the old enforcement officer. He was totally useless. And now there's Brendan Bogan, I believe his name is. He's the new guy. Turns out he's useless. And then we have the supervisor. And the supervisor gave himself a job description in which he is the chief enforcement officer for Scio Township. Therefore, this is all on you. You need to do something about the trash in people's yards. You need to do something about the people on Scio Church with the party barns, because this all falls now in your lap. Your consultants have failed, and therefore it's now your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
I see no other hands raised at this time.
In that case, we will move on to approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. The first item is the special meeting of May 9th. These are relatively brief minutes because it was a closed session. Are there any corrections to these minutes? In that case, is someone prepared to move the minutes?
I would move I think you meant May 23rd. Is that correct, sir?
May 23rd at 6 p.m.
Oh, sorry. I guess it's the agenda item says May 9th, but it's May 20. You're right. It's May 23rd.
Okay. Yeah, I would move those.
Okay.
Approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, moved by Riser, support by Brazeau. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed. Minutes of the special meeting of May 23rd. are approved. The next set of minutes are from the regular meeting of May 23rd. And those are, there's more to them. Are there any corrections that people would like to bring forward to these?
Why is there another set of minutes for May 20th?
We had a 6 PM special meeting and then a 7 PM regular meeting.
Closed session regarding Gelman. which
Okay, well, I
reports.
only received one set of minutes, so I guess,
They were sort of late arriving there. There was just the one page, really. or
Okay.
Page and a half for the
well, I guess
special
I'll
meeting.
approve it. If there's nothing to it.
We've approved that. We're now looking at the regular
Okay.
meeting minutes from May 23rd. And unless someone else has corrections, I only noticed one thing on page 15 of the minutes. In the discussion of the motion, the name of the attorney is misspelled. It's Bushy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Beuche. It's misspelled twice,
Got
but
it. Apologies, I'll fix that.
that's the only, I think it's probably from transcribing something by ear. Unless there are other corrections, is someone prepared to move the minutes as corrected for the regular meeting?
I'll move.
Moved by Brazeau,
Support by Riser.
support by Riser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those minutes are approved as corrected. That brings us to the consent agenda. 2 items added, 2 items removed. Is someone prepared to move the consent agenda?
And if I could just review the items that were
Sure, that would be helpful to. our
proposing consent
minutes.
agenda as revised is G1, G3, G4, G6, G7, G8, G9, K1, and K2.
Sorry.
What is still on the agenda is G1, G3, G4, G6, G7, G8, G9, K1, and K2.
so the, regarding the assessor assistant,
Yes, that's still on the consent agenda.
that is not on my, do I have an old agenda?
Might be,
I don't,
What is
you
the
just say what
number?
G9 is.
sure. G9 is the conditional offer of employment to
Oh.
Sarah McCleary for position of assistant assessor.
I
Okay,
think I
that's what
printed out mine before that was added.
Okay.
Okay, so we have all those, plus we have the items that were moved up from new business.
That's K1 and K2. Yep.
All right, someone, Brazeau moves the consent agenda. Support from Riser. And this includes payment of the bills, so please call the roll.
Okay, starting with Brazeau tonight. Brazeau?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Riser?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Flintoff? Yes. Motion consent agenda adopted as revised.
That brings us, thank you, that brings us to reports. We have several written reports that were submitted, and I apologize, the one from the supervisor was produced just today, so it wasn't in the meeting packet, but anyone who would like a copy, we can, I guess.
I can add it to the
It'll
packet.
be added to the meeting packet subsequent to the meeting.
Was it uploaded, or was it still on the website, or is it just your manual?
It's not on the website yet.
Got it.
I'll add it tomorrow.
Just for clarity, okay.
And thank you for submitting a report.
Oh, you're welcome.
Supervisor.
Are there any comments or questions about any of the reports? I know there was some discussion about the roads advisory.
Yeah, well, yeah, I did the Scio Township plan, the planning commission met last night and we adjourned at 12:30 a.m., not done with our business. So I didn't get around to doing it until this morning and I emailed to everyone. I emailed it to you, Christie, so
Thank you.
if the supplement gets packed,
We'll do that.
I can give a brief report on what happened or didn't happen. The biggest thing that happened was that the planning commission voted on a 5-1 vote to recommend against the PUD for the Knights of Columbus project for various reasons. And we also heard a really good presentation from our township engineers, OHM, about the water contract district, the water district where we have the capability, the actual sewer contract and where we have sewer capability. So that was a good presentation. There's also a interesting project, a proposed doggy daycare that's going to be in one of the buildings along the facade of Meyer. It's gonna shampoo dogs and watch them for the day. The problem is that the planning commission is having is that it's a pretty concrete laden area. So where are the dogs going to relieve themselves? So we adjourned it to hear from the applicant to find out how you're going to deal with the waste that these pets are going to invariably void as they enter to and come from, because people don't want to push shopping carts or walk through that stuff on the parking lot. So it got tabled for that. Stay tuned. The Norfolk PUD was recommended to be declined. That'll be a full board of trustee action item in weeks to come. Approved a private road for a Turkey Run, called Turkey Run, that's gonna be for a split of a parcel. And Andy, they're gonna work with you on where that road goes and how wide it has to be, both to protect wetlands as well as to allow you to get a couple trucks in and out. And then the one that we adjourned at 12:30 was because of a PUD request for 3 car dealerships located on Jackson Road. And there just wasn't sufficient time remaining in people's gas tanks to be able to kind of flesh out all that needed to be and deliberate on that. So that'll be coming up for another planning commission meeting. Thank you.
I can add a little bit to the supervisor's report in response to the question about the Trailwoods subdivision with regard to their road improvement plan. This is an issue that gained a lot of attention as the route was staked for construction, which was scheduled to start this week. The road commission in response has asked for a pause and the plans for construction and to allow a time for a meeting between the developer, the Trailwoods subdivision developer, and the residents of Trailwoods, and anyone else who would like to come to that meeting. The developer and residents have agreed to make it open to the public and have asked to hold that meeting here at Scio Township on the 29th of this month at 6:30. And they've also asked if we can help them make it available to remote viewing and participation. So we're gonna try and work that out. We haven't worked out the detail yet, but that is a request from them for that. Those who are not familiar with the issue of the agreement between the developer, the county road commission, and the state, Eagle, because it affects a waterway, that's Honey Creek, the current plan as proposed is to reconfigure that intersection of Stabler and Park Road by shifting Stabler Road over to the east in order to reroute Honey Creek, which passes underneath both Park and Stabler Road at that intersection. And when the staking of the construction was done, the residents realized what was about to happen and hadn't had information or very much information before then about the specifics. And so that's what has resulted in the pause in construction to allow for that sharing of information to occur. And if there are any other questions in regard to my report, I'm happy to hear them.
I just had an update and brief report for me.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, briefly, sorry, I don't have a written report prepared. I do want to let the board and the public know we're on track for the audit. Plant Moran's been here second week on track. moving through things at a good speed. Thanks to all the staff for all the help. And thanks also to manager Joyce Parker. I know she's prioritizing the finance director services, and we will probably have another short-term contract or of some sort for a while to make sure that we can keep in compliance and continue producing the reports that we're required to report on. I did have a question on the Roads Advisory Committee. Thank you for doing that. I wanted to thank the Roads Advisory Committee. I saw that you all had started talking about the need to get volunteers together to start talking about potential millage questions that the board wanted to, have the process start around roads. We also know that the bus millage renewal will be expiring, and if Scio Township wants to continue it, that would have to be renewed around 2024 as well. So I just want to thank you for that and acknowledge, I know John Culbertson, the Sustainability Task Force, has talked about trying to pull those together. And so I just wanted to thank Jillian and Jan for starting to have those conversations. We can get a plan together.
Thank you.
Is the planning commission involved as well?
Not yet. We'll be setting up a meeting with the three of us to talk
Yeah,
through things.
figuring
but
out a
there's-
proposal
Yeah,
to
there's a lot of moving parts right now, but you have time.
Any other questions or comments on reports or any other oral reports? In that case, let's move on. The next item is the public hearing. Before we open up the public hearing, in order to provide some of the information that some folks asked for, we have a brief presentation from Chief Hood. And then we will, after the presentation, we will open up the public hearing.
Hey, Christie, can you bring me in to present? Thank you.
And when we get to the public hearing, we'll explain a little bit more about this public hearing and also the sequence of events that is planned in terms of additional public hearings with regard to this assessment.
Yeah, I will do my best, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Board of Trustees, Manager Parker. Thank you, residents, for being here and residents that are at home. I have just a brief presentation to talk about the public hearing for the fire special assessment. And this is mainly meant to be informative and hopefully it'll help answer some of the folks' questions. I know the notice that went out might have been quite alarming.
Well, Andy, can everybody hear Andy in the back? 'Cause I know this is really important.
I don't think the mic is.
Yeah, so Andy, can you really make sure that mic's on or pull it forward?
You know,
Maybe even hold it if you had to.
Hold it right.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, I think you're gonna need to actually hold it that close, Andy, unfortunately.
Try it again, Chief.
Is this better?
If you talk, you can aim it at you. Yeah, there you go.
Better?
Yes, is that good?
No,
No?
we can hear her, but not.
Chief, do you wanna sit up
Sure.
here and face
Absolutely.
our residents? We can all scoot over.
Yeah.
Let's make this work.
Yeah, let's just chill. On the chair here.
This is fine.
Great, stand. What a concept.
Is that better for folks in the audience? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So, again, I think everybody recognizes that notice that came was a little bit alarming.
Yeah.
And I hope I can help answer some of your questions and talk to you about the timeline and what we hope to accomplish, which might help folks out. So there's really two questions the township is asking, and they're kind of out of order in my slides here. Capital assessment approval to construct a second fire station is local question 2. And an operating question to fund operations of both stations is question 1. One thing I need to make note of that a lot of folks have reached out to me about before, this will replace the existing assessment. It is not in addition to. The one that currently exists will go away and this will replace it.
How much is the existing?
1.35.
No, 375.
So the capital question, no more than 0.75 mils for up to 20 years. And that can only be used to pay for buildings, property, or new buildings or new vehicles to put in brand new fire stations. Nothing else. So this can't go towards parks. This can't go towards township operations, township buildings, nothing like that. Solely dedicated for fire protection. Our current estimates are it's about $10 to $12 million for us to construct a building and put emergency response vehicles inside that building. The reason I don't have a definitive number is because we don't have a blueprint for a plan that we can bid out for contract. Ballpark estimate, we think this would cost approximately 0.55 mils for about 12 years to pay for. If you look at that over time, the capital assessment, if we look in say 2024 tax year, might be about 0.55 mils after we get bidding back and we know what it would cost to build a building. And that would go on for some time. We might say with the growth in the west side of the township, we find a piece of property in say 2027 or 2028 that we want to grab onto in case we need to build a third fire station. And let me stress, we are not suggesting we need that now, but we want to be prepared if we do. That we might assess a little bit higher tax rate to purchase property and then go back to just paying off the bonds for the fire station that we currently built. At some point in the future, our Zeeb Road fire station will need to be replaced. So we need to look for some property to do that. And I'd like to plan for that as well. So you see out in 2035 or so, a small assessment to purchase a third piece of property for when the Zeeb Road station needs to be rebuilt. Operating question. This one, no more than 3.75 mils for 10 years. And again, this replaces the existing 1.35 mil assessment. Would fund operations of 2 fire stations, which includes personnel, replacing our vehicles and equipment as it gets old. And this would gradually increase over 10 years as a second station is built and we add staffing. Every year you'd have a public hearing like this, where the fire chief, myself, or whoever's in my place at the time, would come in and say, hey, this is what our expenses are. This is the number of people we need. The public would have input. And then the board would vote to adopt that millage rate, and then it would go on our tax assessment. Without a second fire station, there's very little need to increase our taxes next year. I'd anticipate if voters approve these questions, next year I would ask for 3 firefighters that would fully staff our Zeeb station. We currently have 3 firefighters on duty at the Zeeb station, and I'd like to get that to 4. We can sleep 4 there. So next year, provided the voters approve this, we'd see a small increase in our tax, and I estimate that at about 1.4 to 1.5 mils. And slowly, we'd maintain that going forward until the second fire station is built. I've got some timeline estimates in there, but I estimate around spring of 2026, we'd have a building built and be asking for firefighters to start staff that building. Right now, there's a very difficult time hiring firefighters. So I anticipate we're probably looking before we reach full staffing 2030, 2031. So we'd see a gradual increase over time as we're able to hire firefighters to staff that building. And some people ask, why do we need anything else? Well, if we look at Scio Township over time, and granted, I've been in the community for well over a decade, but I've only worked here for 3 years. We look at increases in township population. We're shy of 18,000 population today. I think we've all heard about some new developments that are on the west side of the township. They're going to add more population. Versus 1990, just shy of 11,000 folks. Our increases call volume. Last year, we did 1,450 calls. A decade ago, that was 787. We anticipate this trend to continue as it's a national trend everywhere. Fire departments are always getting more busy. And one other thing we really looked at was a response time. Our goal is to beat your emergency in under 6 minutes. Right now in the southeast section of the township, the Uplands area, Scio Church, Liberty, and the west side of Jackson, Parkland Plaza, all in those areas, our response times travel upwards of 10 minutes to get to the emergencies there. So how would this affect an average homeowner in Scio Township? So being it's difficult for me to anticipate wages past the 2-year contract we have with our firefighters, and we don't know what inflation is going to be in the future wage growth, tax growth. I'm using today's dollars for everything here. If the average home in Scio Township has a value of about $400,000, it has a taxable value of about $200,000. Currently, a homeowner with the average home in Scio pays about $270 a year, or about $22.50 a month for fire protection. Next year, if we're able to add 3 people and a little bit of equipment, I estimate that homeowner next year would pay about $320 or about $26.75 a month. This chart here, you can see in 2026, we add more people. And again, it's basically the same chart. It would increase over time as we're adding staff. Worst case scenario, 2023, the last year of the assessment, that average homeowner could pay $900 a year. I don't anticipate we would need all that. However, that is the worst case scenario. It'd be about $75 a month for that homeowner with a $400,000 home. The increase $630 a year, about $52.50 a month over the next 10 years. And again, that's at the end of the assessment, worst case scenario. So right now, what do Scio residents have for fire protection? We've got one centrally located station on Z Road, and we staff it with 3 firefighters daily, about 90% of the time. About 10% of the time, we got 4 firefighters there. If approved, what will Scio residents get? Because that's an important question. First of all, our first course of business, we'd staff that our first station with a total of 4 people daily. We'd construct a fire station on township-owned property that's on Wagner, south of Liberty. And when fully staffed, we'd have both a fire engine and a rescue at that station for a total of 5 people. Brief timeline to implement. This is probably what we'd be looking to ask for. 2024, add firefighters. We'd ask for a little bit from the capital because we need to put deposits on vehicles and start getting some building plans together. Bid out the project. 2025, secure funding or secure financing, because we'd have to bond for this. This is not something the township can afford right up front. And develop a payment plan over time to pay that bond off. 2025 construction season, build the station, and we anticipate it being open in around 2026. 2026, we'd see some increases in staffing. Start with 6 firefighters. And the way the fire service works, each shift works a 24-hour shift, and we have 3 shifts. So shift 1 is on Monday for 24 hours. Shift 2 takes over for Tuesday for 24 hours. Shift 3 takes over Wednesday for 24 hours, and shift 1 starts again. So for me to staff 1 person 24/7, I have to hire 3 people. That's why you see 3 in a lot of this. And over time, we continue to add firefighters as we can until we reach the staffing level that the township desires. I threw in a couple of slides here about how many firefighters it really takes to do some of the jobs we do. Medical emergencies, they account for about half our work. We'll run on medical calls, car accidents, strokes, cardiac arrest, that type of stuff. And between the ambulance personnel and the personnel we send, 4 to 7 people is generally enough to take care of it. Some people say on a cardiac arrest, you should have about 10 people on scene. We're not able to meet that standard, but we can generally handle a medical emergency adequately. Fighting a car fire, we need about 4 to 7 people for just a routine car fire. It's 2 people to operate the hose line, a person to operate the fire engine, actually a person in charge to direct everybody, and a couple more people to help pull the car apart and open it up. We're short on that. We don't have enough folks to safely do that job today. Manage a car accident. Again, there's all the places laid out, 7 to 9 people we typically need on a normal car accident, and we're short there. When we got a person trapped in a car, vehicle extrication, typically we need 9 to 14 people. We've got mutual aid to our neighbors coming in to help on those calls. Tractor trailer fire, 8 to 14 folks. And mutual aid, we're stripping half of our mutual aid companies to deal with the tractor trailer fire. And then on a house fire, anywhere from 50 to 28 people, depending on the size, and for a rural area with no municipal water areas or areas with municipal water. So who made some recommendations? If we look back, Chief Carl Furch, back in 2015, created a strategic plan. He worked with Carlisle Wortman. And the main goal of that strategic plan in 2015 was that by 2020, we would have a second fire station operating at Wagner and Liberty. Clearly, we didn't make that goal. 2018, the township paid Emergency Services Consulting International, a firm that does work all around the world, make recommendations in fire service. And in 2018, they provided us an analysis that said we should probably have a second fire station operational. 2022 Fire Services Guidance Committee, residents spoke about that committee that met late last year. They took all this data, some other data, as committee was made up of community members, business owners, township representatives, planning commission representatives, and fire service representatives. And they are the ones that got us to the recommendation that you see here today. If anyone is a fan of QR codes, if you take a picture with your camera of that code that's up on the screen, it'll take you right to the web page where you can get all this data. Each of those strategic plans and analyses are on the web page for you to look at. I'll pause here for 1 second. And then also, where can you go get more information? sciotownship.org/fire. That'll take you to a page that has a lot of information specifically related to this question. Email address of fire@sciotownship.org. That email address comes to me, the assistant chief, and our administrative assistant. And we've got quite a few inquiries that way. We've responded to those within a day. So if you have a question, feel free to reach out. I'm in the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, the number 665-6001. I've spoken to a number of residents about these issues already as well. And I'm welcome residents reaching out. In addition, we've got printed materials both at the township hall and at the fire station. And board, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
So that brings us to the public hearing itself, and as clerk pointed out earlier, this is the first public hearing in what will be a series eventually of, I think, 3. That's what we contemplate. One will occur July
25th, tentatively.
July 25th. And then after the November election, there will be another public hearing. And whichever way the vote goes in November, we still will have to have that public hearing, because if the ballot question proceeds, then we'll be setting the roll with the new assessment. But if it doesn't, then we will be using the existing assessment that was approved by voters in 2019. And in either case, we have to have that public hearing in order to set the roll for the November taxes. If someone is on the board is prepared to make the motion to open the public hearing. All right. So the motion that you're making, if you'd like to read it aloud.
Sure.
All right.
Open the public hearing on special assessment district within which the cost of fire protection is proposed to continue to be assessed, as including all lands located within the boundaries of Scio Township, except lands and premises exempt from taxes under the General Property Tax Act, PA Public Act 206 of 1893, with the purpose of the assessment to annually defray the cost of providing fire protection and emergency medical services, including purchasing of property, construction and maintenance of buildings, and acquisition of apparatus and equipment to support the provision of fire protection and emergency medical services.
So the motion by Carrie, support by Brazeau. All those in favor, or actually, we should probably have a roll call for this.
Brazeau, Carrie,
Yes.
Riser,
Yes.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Flintoff, yes, motion passes.
So we are opening the public hearing at 8:05. Anyone who would like to speak on this during this public hearing, please come forward and speak into the microphone. We ask that everyone state your name and address clearly for the record. It's important for the public hearing. And those speaking during the public hearing are each entitled to 5 minutes to make a comment. Would anyone like to come up? Please come forward and come up to the microphone. We have a panel.
My name is John Boyle. I'm a longtime resident of Ann Arbor. I own a home and an industrial park in Scio Township. I live at 3285 Miller Road. Address is Ann Arbor. Got a few comments. Basically, I was raised in the world of finance. I work on corporate and government restructuring. Do a lot of finance, a lot of strategizing. At Ford, I ran a number of departments, including the pension department, which is better forgotten. And what I got from this township, first of all, I got the notice. We'll talk about process. I got the notice 6 days before the meeting. So if I want to do any homework, and I'm a busy guy, which I am, I still run 2 companies, I got a problem with time. And then I get another announcement that you've done sensitivity analysis, looking at 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 different options, which suggests to me you don't know what the costs are, or you don't have a forecast as to what the costs are. If you do, I haven't seen it. In my world, I would not begin to ask for 180% increase in my funding, 1.35 mils to 3.75 mils. And I'm only going on what you sent me. There's other things out there. I can't adjust to them. I would not begin to ask for that without doing my homework. And my homework would include a 5-year run. Here's what my costs are. Let me show you the elements of those costs. And here's where I'm going. And let me show you the elements of those costs. And I would point out to this august board that your revenue goes up every year based upon population increase, which has been fairly sizable over the years, and based upon inflation. So your revenue is going up. And I would expect that at some point, it goes up to a point where you need another station. But if your revenue has gone up by double since when you started off with 1 station and now you need 2 stations, you don't need to change the rate, you don't need to change the millage rate. So that's my comment. Where's the analysis? For Pete's sake, where's the analysis? If you say, here's the cost of the fire department, don't just say, here's the cost of the fire department. Show me in detail the cost elements of the fire department. And then show me in detail what you're going to do going forward. And let the numbers speak for themselves. Then you don't send out something like this, which has no numbers in it, no analysis in it. Just, well, we're going to increase the millage by 180%, and God bless you. Need to change the way you do business in this township. You can start here. I wouldn't vote for this proposal if it was the last proposal on earth. Now, that being said, I have a long history with the fire department. I go back to Carl Furch. Carl Furch and I had a wonderful relationship. My children never missed his Halloween parties. They were wonderful. And anytime I had a problem, especially with the planning commission that involved the fire department, Carl Furch came and bailed my ever-loving tail out. And anytime Carl Furch needed money, all he had to do was ask for it. And he had a whole host of people showing up with checks, including me. So I have a lot of respect for the fire department, goes back a long ways. I have zero respect for the planning ability and the financial ability and the analytical ability of this board.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Barth, B-A-R-T-H. I live at 1612 Chapleau Drive in Hometown Village. I must go back a little ways. A number of years ago, I spent a lot of hours in this very room working with the Public Safety Commission here in the township that at the time gave our firefighters and Sheriff's Department quite a raise, and at that time we were hoping to get things organized so that they could move forward. Since that time, my property taxes have gone up, even though I'm grandfathered in, about 43%. In addition to that, we have had hundreds, and this goes a little bit to what Mr. Boyle referred to. We've had hundreds and hundreds of new homes, which contrary to, and I apologize, Chief, but the $400,000 thing, I think these new homes are closer to 7 than they are to 4. The increases in revenue from all of those new properties, I have also scoured through the internet, through the reports and everything that I can see, and I don't see much that describes how those things are doing. I certainly understand the need for additional services and for what the folks here are asking for. But what I don't understand and what I don't see very clearly, once again, as Mr. Boyle referred to, are the accurate assessments of what's going on here. Where's all the money gone? Do we need some kind of attack of fiscal responsibility to rein things in? Because it seems like we're just paying more and more and more. This year, we're going to get hit with the full 5. Next year, probably the full 5. In addition, we want more and more in millages. I think before the next meeting, I would hope that the board does a little bit better job of clarifying these economic issues to all of us. Thank
you. Lawrence Murdy, 1222 Shady Oaks Drive. So I second everything you've heard. You'll hear it again from me. I think it's okay to be redundant so that you hear this is what we're thinking. I think the clerk said, and I just heard it, there's going to be other requests for our monies in the next year or two. You know, I would hate to see the bus millage renewal be a victim to this as a result of this. I think I would have, and I would like to have seen this meeting ahead of the public hearing. I would have preferred to see a meeting such as this ahead of receiving an official notice of a public hearing that you're going to raise our taxes or our millage, 3 1/4, 3 3/4, or whatever that happens to be. But anyway, I'm just going to read my comments on this. First, of the millage itself, you've told us that the other millage, existing millage, is going to go away. Is that by statute? Are you held to that? Are we to take your word that that's going to happen? Because if not, if you move forward with this, I'd like to see included in the resolution, then that goes away before you collect any other new operating millage. So I've seen on the map and the stats on the call volume, the call types and response times. I get wanting the response times lowered and from the current average. How will this proposal notably better the response times for those that are north of I-94? I certainly get it, how it'll lower the response times if you're in the southeast, but there's, you know, I already have a good, per the charts, my neighborhood has a decent response time, but if you're in Loch Alpine, if you're up on Joy Road, if you're out on Baker Road, how are the response times going to change by building a fire station? I just haven't seen the support for that yet by you. I get that the fire chief, I would expect nothing less than this proposal from our professional firefighters. It's up to you now to weigh the merits and decide how to allocate the resources that we have towards this. Regarding the call types, and this is really my concern. In the stats, there were 1,300 calls last year, of about 800 of which were either fire or EMS. It said here that it's not possible to break out response time by emergency type, EMS or fire. But I'd like to know the estimate. You know, what is the estimate of a fire response time versus EMS? I personally put a priority on EMS. I'd like, if I'm having a medical emergency, I'd like to have someone there yesterday. So of the 800 emergencies, about 92% were EMS calls. Of the 800 calls, 64 are fire. What type of fire calls were those? And how would the outcomes of those fires been different by building a fire station at Liberty and Wagner? I suggest based on the stats that the EMS should be the bigger focus. As I said, I'd prefer EMS. If we're not hitting adequate response times for medical emergencies, that's something that should be fixed today, not 5 years from now. Contract with HVA for a dedicated ambulance in the township if that's what it takes, but do something to take care of EMS. Next year or 2 years from now, when the senior communities open on Baker Road, you're going to have EMS calls to that facility several times a week. You know, it's going to, and there, I think in the response time there is on the slower side. So I'm going to leave out the ladder truck. So on the money, some of the, something I'm thinking about on some of the online information, and we saw it here, and they talk about car and tanker fires. Just how many runs are these to I-94? Do we charge for those calls? Chelsea Fire Department bills for runs to non-residents, primarily on I-94. I'm guessing most are related to the I-94 runs. Charges to their non-residents, more likely to their insurance companies, start at about $500. Do we charge for runs on I-94 like Chelsea Fire Agency does? If we don't, why not? And lastly, if we proceed forward and the voters approve the millage, who and how will decisions be made in the build out and spending? How will oversight look? Will it be in the hands of the guidance committee? And I just have questions on that. So those are all questions that could have come up ahead of tonight in the official proposal and public hearing. So appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.
Charles Colson, 1899 Kensington Boulevard. I would like to echo quite a bit the previous speakers in that the detail that we received prior to this meeting is woefully lacking. My opinion was we were being asked to buy a pig in a poke. Here's what we're going to sell you, go out, buy it, and we'll tell you later what's going to be in it. I do appreciate the chief's presentation tonight that gives some idea of where this is going to be spent and what the need for it is. However, he admitted that there's no detail there, partly because there hasn't been any plans, definitive plans drawn up to say, this is what it's going to cost for each of these items. This has to be done before this can be put to the public in a more detailed proposal. Currently, Scio Township in 2023, based on the Washtenaw Assessor's site, has $1,657,000,000 of taxable property. The 3.75 mil levy would generate $6.2 million per year. In the proposal that came out in the mail, it sounded like that's what it was going to be. I understand from tonight's presentation, that's sort of a top end. How did you get to that top end? How are we going to be assured that, okay, that top end, you approved it, we're going to get it? The 0.75 mils will generate over $1.2 million a year. Again, the same comment. You're asking for $7.5 million a year in bonded funding. We need to know where it's going to be spent and in detail where it's going to be spent. This has to be put before the public before anything can be thought about putting this on the ballot. If it is not made public what all this is going to be prior to November, and we're just told we'll have meetings afterward, we'll put out proposals, there's no way this is going to fly. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to make comments.
Christy, would you please ask residents to speak into the microphone because those of us on Zoom cannot hear? Thank you.
Pam Zowell, 395 West Delhi Road. It's not, the mic's not working though. That's working now. Pam Zowell. We can't hear it back here. I can't.
You have to talk right into it.
Pam Zowell. Okay, I'll try to talk loud. Like the other people who spoke, I was shocked by the form of the notice. I'm an attorney by trade. And when you just kind of like drop bombs on people without any kind of heads up, either in the newsletter, it was very jarring. Like the one gentleman said, 1 week notice, I had plans this evening, which had to be canceled because I found it important enough to be here for myself and everyone here. The thing that kind of caught me off guard is my mind was, well, didn't we just vote for this? Didn't we just approve because we were presented all of the needs? And it was just a few years ago. And we heard about all the renovations. They even had some meet and greets, come see all the renovations, see all the new things, which my kids went to, which we stopped by and saw. And then tonight, with all due respect, you're saying, okay, this new one we just renovated needs to be replaced. Well, then why did we just renovate it? So then I start thinking, like some of these other people are saying, are we being good stewards of our money? Why did we renovate a building that apparently needs to be replaced? That was a waste of money. So we kind of signed on and voted and approved in 2019, the renovations requested. And now we're basically being told that the brand new renovated building and all the equipment we got needs to be replaced. And we have to get a new building that will be, as you said, Chief, is hard to even staff. So what we don't want to have happen is we replace a building we just renovated, buy a new building we can't staff. And we who all, generously and gratefully and with, we support the fire department, of course, vote yes in 2019. And now we're being asked to vote yes more when we gave a big amount of money then. That apparently I saw the renovations were beautiful and it seemed like it was a positive. Now I'm being told those same things need to go. So that's very confusing. It's very frustrating to be kept just asking for more without more given to us as far as explanation. And if we're gonna, if we shouldn't have renovated that one, then maybe the priority in 2019 should have been scrap Zeeb and make the new one fantastic. But to kind of like now that it's perfect, say it needs to go, that really is, I grew up in a household where you don't just throw out stuff. You keep it, you fix it, you invest it, and that's what you asked us to do. We said yes. And now we're being told that that was a waste of money. So I'm also concerned about the kind of top end. It just kind of never ending. The top end's never ending. So I too, like the other people here, don't like being surprised about anything, financial or otherwise. And to me, and the gentleman I've met tonight, it feels like the train's on the track and we have no choice. And of course, we support you, Chief. We support safe community. So it makes us sound bad that we're even criticizing it, which we're not. Obviously criticizing safety. We're criticizing inefficient communication, asking for more without giving us more, and us already signing on a few years ago and basically being told the money, all that money is either gone or was wasted by renovating a building that apparently should have been replaced. So like the other gentleman, he said he wouldn't vote on it. I am definitely, and I've never not voted for a safety assessment. Without more, I would have to say that today my vote would be no, just like that gentleman. So again, in the future, maybe give us a heads up before you put it on the agenda and send out the notice. Thank you.
Pam,
Yes.
would you like to give your address for the record?
95 West Del High.
Thank you.
All right, good evening again, everyone. For those that don't know, I'm Ryan Yapel. My address, I'll give a business one, 7535 Jackson Road. I did sit on the Fire Services Guidance Committee, which helped to create ultimately what this plan has become. I will say that I'm going to reiterate my disappointment in the communication. Maybe some of that ultimately fell back onto me being a member of that committee and us not communicating well enough to the public in advance of this. I think that if we did a better job communicating as an entire community, we would have been able to not necessarily dissuade everyone's concerns, but at least educate and provide more information instead of acting as if this is a surprise, as other members of the public have said. Ultimately, I think this comes back on some of what we've seen over the last couple of years here at the board. We don't have a finance director. I think if we did have a finance director, we could help do some additional modeling and provide additional information to all the residents and taxpayers as to how this exactly works. The chief has done a good job, but ultimately there's a lot of information, not only in the information that the committee reviewed, but different iterations of it to ultimately come down to the final plan. So some of that doesn't have hours and hours of time to pour through all this and even understand what the process was. It's daunting to even look at, to try to understand. But I think a finance director certainly could have helped that process. I think having, Mark, to the meeting we had back in December where, you discussed sort of those microsites and using technology to provide information to residents. This would be a perfect way to roll this out. I mean, we could go through and anyone that wanted to know about this could sign up. They would be emailed updates as soon as there was an update from anyone, either from the fire department or from the township itself. I mean, that would be something awesome if we could work with Mr. Bailey now that he's our IT director to see if he could roll this out as the first project to use that. I mean, that I think would help a lot. Ultimately, I understand people are frustrated and a lot of other things at this process. I totally support the fire department. I have a building that's going to have a very high taxable value here in another few months. Ultimately, it's something I'm in favor of. I understand from the cost side of it, that is a big concern for me. I mean, my assessment alone on this is probably going to be close to $10,000 a year. So it's a huge, and not to diminish anyone else's assessment, it's a huge increase. But we can't keep relying on Ann Arbor to come to our aid. They're growing like crazy. They don't always have the right equipment available. A lot of it's down for maintenance. Plus they're further away. If you really need somebody to respond, much to Mr. Murray's comment about HVA, HVA's response times have continued to get worse and worse and worse. One of the elements of this plan is to eventually have enough firefighters that we can provide transport services at some level to the hospital, and we don't have to wait for HVA or get an override, which is now the policy of basically the medical director for both counties, both Livingston and Washtenaw, where the fire department will take somebody to the hospital if they absolutely have to, but it's almost like they get their hand slapped, I think, to an extent, if they take somebody to the hospital. They have to go before a board and justify their actions. I think this plan, the intention of this plan, and the intention of the whole goal is to provide service to residents, so that way, if HVA can or cannot step up, our firefighters can step up, and if you're having a heart attack or somebody's having a stroke, they can take you to the hospital, or they can come save you when your house is on fire. I mean, that's the eventual goal. Like I said, I understand this is a lot of money, 110%. And I understand not everybody's going to be for it, but ultimately it's probably the right thing to do. Thanks, everybody.
Who's next? Does anyone else present choose to speak? Please come forward.
The name is Paul Crosby, 595 Scio Meadow Drive. And I've been a resident here for around 23 years. I guess I only got one question or comment, is how equitable this will be. If this goes forward, who's going to pay for it? Are all those, I mean, are those properties that you have given abatements to, are they going to pay their fair share? Or who actually pays for all this? How fair is it going to be across the whole of Scio Township? Or is it just going to be localized to certain, individuals? Are businesses going to be exempt from it? Who's going to pay for that? I just need that. I think we all need that clarity. Who's going to share in this huge millage? So that's one of many comments, but I think everything else was addressed by those before me.
Thank you, Paul.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Who's next to speak?
Hope you folks can hear me. My name is Kathleen Brandt. I live on 2534 Roseland Drive. I would like to give some background on the work that the committee did. I attended every one of those sessions via Zoom. The analysis was incredibly detailed. I don't know if you folks know Mark Perry. His professional career is involved with realty assessments. He did such a robust analysis, forecasting. I think one of the problems here is I had the benefit of that information, and you folks have not had the benefit of that. Lots of detail is on the webpage where you could get that kind of analysis, but I think some of that information is a little bit overwhelming. It's almost as if there's too much detail on the webpage if you really, really dig into it. I came to learn about fire operations, the whole 2 in, 2 out, the shared services model in Washtenaw Township, where Scio helps Dexter and any other municipality in the same back. I heard the firefighters say that we currently have 3 on staff, so they can never get to 2 in, 2 out. And that's a safety issue for them. So they are currently operating in an unsafe environment, meaning they have 3 people on site. They could send 2 in, and the reason for sending 2 in is if one of those firefighters goes down, the second person can help them. the person on the outside can actually not come in. It would have to be a 2-2 replacement. And so what happens is homeowners see this situation and the firefighters are forced to say, I'm sorry, I can't go in because we only have 3 on staff. The only way they could go in is if perhaps Ann Arbor was able to assist. And I heard them speak about how troubling that is if a homeowner says, please come into my house and fight this fire. And legally, they can't go in. But I also heard them say they do go in. They do they do efforts that are actually risky, and it's not safe. So why can't we at least get them in a safe environment? I was interested in this topic because my father was a volunteer firefighter. Station was close to our house. The alarm would go off. He would jump in his car, he'd run over there. All volunteer, he didn't get paid for that. It was his sense of civic duty, volunteerism. So I think we need to support our firefighters, but I think what we have here is a quote from the movie. What we have here is a failure to communicate. Cool Hand Luke, right? Robert Redford said that. And we have clearly a failure of communication. If you look at your taxes online through Scio's webpage, gets into the BS&A system. If you look at your total taxes, the only thing Scio gets out of that group of, let's say 19 mills, is they get just about 1 mill. So the rest of it goes someplace else. Conservation, transportation, parks, schools. So of that money, that 1 mill, it has to run the entire township, all operational, the entire township. And we currently run a deficit out of the general fund, meaning this source of funds, because it's been conservative on direct millage for operating. And residents have been very generous in funding conservation, parks, transportation. So then if you look at this and the fire station is getting 1.35, as I attended these meetings, I heard the history of some of this. And it was originally at 0.9. There was an analysis. There was an agreement that it would, I'm sorry, I've got more to say. Is that, if that's okay? This originally was supposed to go on the ballot or actually be voted as 1.65, and that 1.65 for fire was analyzed as break even. So our board at that time shortchanged the fire department as well as the residents, because who suffers if they can't service your property? The residents do. So the board shortchanged us in that. So to sum this up, obviously I'm in support, but I'm an educated user of this data because I saw it. But may I ask, please, that you consider having another public hearing to clear up some confusion, because I'm not surprised, I guess, that people are.
They've already have a bunch of them scheduled.
I'm sorry.
Keep going, Kathleen.
Okay, that's somebody that's upset about the process. I understand. So that's all. Thanks.
Who's next?
My name is Mary Cooperwasser. I live at 3285 Cottontail Court. First, Chief, I want to thank you for your service and for the service of the members of your department. very appreciative of all the work that you do. I have to say, I confess that this is the first public hearing that I've ever attended. I've lived in Scio Township for 20 years and I should have been here before. Although I can't tell you whether I will be here again, except for this issue, that's very clear. I was absolutely in shock when I read the notice. It was frankly very frightening. I did some very quick math and I saw this is real money. And I saw nothing to explain what this was about. So one of my very first comments, and I hope people can hear, is the fact that these people cannot hear, nor the people that are tuning in and care about this on Zoom. The fact that there is a public hearing with inadequate microphones, with our having to ask you, the board members at the beginning of the meeting, to please speak up so that we could hear. The fact that there aren't any written materials for us to be looking at, that I recognize you must have spent a great deal of time on that presentation, sir. But the fact that I had to I'm sure everybody else in the audience here, scan very quickly for detailed information and then somehow try to write it down on little pieces of paper that I might have brought with me or remember what it was. And frankly, I can't. So I can't really comment on any of the details. And this really concerns me that it seems like this is the cart before the horse, forgive the cliche. You are asking for what I feel is a lot of money from all of these people, whatever the value of our homes are. And yet we don't really know what it's for. If I understood correctly, and I very well may not have, the question number 2 went to the buildings and the equipment, and that was a 0.75 mil increase or replacement or something of that sort. But if I heard correctly, sir, there aren't any plans for the building and therefore there aren't any costs. So I don't understand how you can ask for a millage increase when you don't know what the costs are going to be. And if I'm wrong on that, I would be very happy about it, but it really does seem to me to be backwards. Let me look at my short notes here. And I guess the last comment really goes to a question to you, sir. I live on Cottontail Court. And again, this is going to go to my ignorance. My neighborhood does not have fire hydrants. I paid attention to that shamefully when 3 doors down from my home burnt to the ground 5 years or so ago, 7 years ago. And this was a brick home and it burnt to the ground. 1 o'clock in the morning, the fire department came out. And what I was told, and I hope I'm wrong on this, they didn't have an ability to get water onto that fire because there's no fire hydrants. So my question goes to the rural areas in this township. How are they going to be served by just having another building and more firefighters? And I recognize that that's important. But what about how do we get the water when it's needed? I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present who would like to speak during the public hearing? If not, then are there people participating remotely who would like to speak during the public hearing?
Yes, the first person is Benjamin Jaffe, followed by Pam Boyd.
And again, I would remind folks who are participating remotely, please give us your name clearly and your address.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Joffe. I am located at 2850 Stein Court, Ann Arbor, Michigan address. I find this whole thing appalling. I find the amount of money asked for ridiculous. And I find that there's no benefit for many of the townships for many of the residents of Scio Township. I had a chance to look over the information, and I don't appreciate being told that I haven't digested the information. And with more information, I would support this. This is in a far corner of Scio Township. It borders Lodi, Pittsfield, and Ann Arbor. It would occur to me that their citizens would get much more benefit than most of the citizens in Scio Township. We do have the mutual agreement pact. And I note that I believe it's Lodi Township uses the city of Saline Fire Department. Yet Lodi Township is much closer to this fire station than most of Scio Township. Who really benefits from this fire station? I would venture to go that 75% of us are still closer to the Zeeb Road Fire Station. Another point, I've never met a fire consultant that hasn't said that you need more fire services. I've been to many township meetings. I've been to many city meetings. I have never met a service provider that hasn't said, well, we need more money so that we can provide more services. Under 75 fires in Scio Township. I heard a lot of things, but I haven't heard stats. How many people died in Scio Township over the past 5 years because of our response time? Would this do anything about that? How much property damage could have been mitigated? Would this do anything about this? I can tell you where I live, that the fire station would be no closer to me, voted up my pet taxes about $2,000 a year. And I have no basis to think, oh, well, you know, we're just going to approve up to 3.75 mils. That doesn't mean we're going to use it all. I've never seen a government not take as much money as it can. I also have a couple other questions. We've heard about the 2+2. Well, that's a staffing issue. Okay. How much does it cost to add more bunks at the Zeeb Road Fire Station? And the other question that I have about 2+2 is how many times has that also been in effect? I believe we also bought a new ambulance or EMS vehicle. I'd like to know how many times that's left its barn. What are the real numbers here? Because we haven't seen anything. The only thing we've seen is pay $12 million to service the city of Ann Arbor, Lodi Township, and Pittsfield Township, and a small sliver of Scio Township. Answer me these questions. How is this going to benefit? Oh, our insurance rates might go down. I can guarantee you my insurance rate is not going to drop $500 a year, nonetheless $2,000 a year. I can dang near sprinkle my entire house for what this millage will cost me over the next 10 years. I also have another question. Oh, well, we might not have enough crew to fight car fires. How many car fighters are we fighting a year? We might not have enough crews to fight trucker fires. How many trucker fires have we had over the past few years? Here's a question. We don't have a long enough ladder to reach a 15-story building. So do we need one of those too? How many 15-story buildings have we had fires in Scio Township? We haven't had any, but that doesn't stop people from asking for more. If we were talking about a real fire services millage, maybe we'd talk something that was equitable to the citizens of Scio Township, because this certainly feels like we're building fire station for the city of Ann Arbor, Lodi, and Pittsfield. If someone can answer these questions about how this is noticeably going to improve our fire services and the safety of this residents in this county, I'd really like to know, because for many of us across the Huron River, this absolutely does nothing for us other than raise our taxes. What's the difference between the population of Lodi? I do have one final question. Did we reach out to Lodi, the city of Ann Arbor, and Pittsfield to see if they wanted to go in on a mutual fire station in this location? Because it darn well seems like it would serve all four of those communities quite well. In fact, it would seem like it would serve those four communities much better than it would serve singular Scio Township. It seems like the Scio Township Fire Department will be going on calls under our mutual service agreement to all of those other places. And I don't think Scio Township should have to foot the bill for such things. I know I won't get answers to any of my questions, and I want to say one thing, which I adopt John Boyle's comments. Where's the data Where's the projections? Where's the need? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Pam Boyd, followed by Rob Pattinson.
Pam Boyd, a Scio resident, Scio Community Newsletter, Scio Community News on YouTube. Kathleen said it right. Our government has a failure to communicate. On Scio Community News YouTube channel, over the last couple of months at the end of the year, 2022, are recordings of all of the Fire Services Guidance Committee meetings. You will get some, not all, of your questions answered there. There's a lot of history, a lot of understanding, a lot of talking about the different needs and the different communities around us. It's not perfect, but it's a start. The other thing is go to sciocommunitynews.org. Look at the reports where I summarize Chief Hood's Fire Service Guidance Committee reports. You're welcome to ask, so we have a problem. We need a finance director. I got involved in Scio Township because I got upset like a lot of you are tonight. I feel your pain. And we need more people who will hold Scio Township's feet to the fire for whatever reason. There were a lot of issues where the fire department was in, didn't have money because of an issue in our finance department. You might want to ask about that. You might want to ask why our township hasn't had a lot of, there's a lot of money in banks, but there really hasn't been a lot of income from that. Why not? There are so many problems with Scio Township. It's like if anybody has done an addition on their house and they uncover problems and it's like an octopus. Yeah, we've got an octopus here. So please get involved. Please research. Please be a part of these meetings twice a month. Go to the YouTube channel if you can't make it, but participate because we need people who are angry and who speak up and voice. We haven't had enough voices. We need you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Rob Pattinson's next, followed by Jonathan.
Thank you. Rob Pattinson, 500 North Zeeb. So I have the dubious honor of attending every single committee meeting of every single committee of Scio Township and recording it and posting it. One of those committees was the Fire Services Guidance Committee. And that gave me the opportunity to learn a lot more about this issue. And I am actually in support of this millage because of everything I learned. They went to great lengths to examine the different issues, the different expenses, and the forecasting and all of the financial aspects of this process. On the Scio Community News YouTube channel, if you search for the Fire Services Guidance Committee, you will find 4 or 5 or 6 meetings in the fall of 2022 up until December of 2022 of all of the Fire Services Guidance Committee meetings. And you will be able to see all of the detail that they went into. I also had the luxury of going with a group of concerned citizens to the fire department and meeting with Chief Hood and the firefighters and learning about what was going on and how poorly our firefighters have been treated for decades. until we finally fix the problems of how we've treated our firefighters for the past several decades, we continue to dispatch them in unsafe conditions, and that is not fair. This millage is at least 10 years overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Up next is Jonathan, followed by David Reed. Jonathan?
Hey, folks, try to not take up my full 5 minutes here. The comments earlier about failure to communicate are very appropriate. And to my colleagues who are encouraging others to participate in Scio Township meetings, that's great. But I can understand, and I love a good mob, good angry mob, but I can understand where this anger is coming from. If we all sat around and came to a complete agreement on everything that was needed around fire and fire services, we all educated ourselves to a point where we all knew the same things, it still wouldn't change the fact that this was sprung on residents of the community with no communication, no advance notice, no real, yes, we do put out videos. We do have lots of meeting notes, but nobody has time to dig into that. I never did until recently. And so I can completely understand that. It's the same thing with how the Trailwood residents found out about the positioning of the new road. We were told all along that it was going to follow the sidewalk. And then when they marked out the markings, when they put in the stakes, I'm sorry, am I interrupting someone's conversation?
No, please go ahead, Jonathan. Somebody was just leaving.
Okay, so the issue wasn't, Will, that we didn't have enough information or we didn't pay attention to the information. The issue is that we were told very clearly, here's a sidewalk. This sidewalk is going to remain here. It will be on the other side of this sidewalk that the road will occur because that's where the new route is. And what we found out was that those stakes that they put in far exceeded that. It not only went over it, it actually went to the point where we're going to have some people going down Stabler Road at, 50, 60 miles an hour. And until the turn, they're pointing at people's backyards. That ain't cool. That's a safety hazard. So again, all these issues aside, it's a top-down communication issue. You're not letting the residents know what's going on. You're not taking a communication like the one that was mailed out and adding a second page that says, here's what all this cranky crank talk means. It's it's about meeting the residents at their needs. I just don't see leadership on this board concerned about that. It's been changing, but not fast enough. Chief Hood, thank you, sir, for your presentation tonight. I think that you've done everything you can to speak up for your firefighters and your department. I think our township needs to do a better job planning and communicating to the residents. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Up next, David Reed. Go ahead, David.
David Reed, 713 Merlin Way in Scio. I was actually the chairman of the Fire Services Committee, and I have, quite frankly, I'm surprised, but not surprised at the reaction that our citizens are having to this meeting. Mr. Boyle, I think, raised some excellent points about the financial analysis. And the sad thing is, Mark Perry spent hours putting together a very detailed financial analysis from which the chief derived the cost of the fire station. I mean, Mark had everything from water bills, electric bills, the cost of desks, the cost of painting, the cost of architectural services, engineering services. everything was there for the building of the building. That information, I assume, was available to the board, but it's not, I don't believe it's been posted to the website. But it's also very dense and very difficult for the non-financial person to grasp. So we have to go through that. Maybe we can get Mark Perry to go through that and put together something that would boil it down to a non-financial guy, somebody like me who can actually understand the numbers a little in a little more simply present them a little more simply. So I think, like Kathleen, I have to correct you. It wasn't Redford. It was Strother Martin who said what we have here is a failure to communicate. And I think that's the only mistake you've made this year so far. So I guess I would call on the board to put together some more analysis, or take some of Mark Perry's, or maybe get Mark Perry in here to explain his numbers and to the folks, because all those numbers are there. The justification for this is there, and it's and you just have to show the people. I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't remember the woman's name who said several times that we were going to we fixed up this fire station and now we're going to abandon it. Well, that's not quite true. I think perhaps you misunderstood the chief's statement in that the Zeebrode Fire Station eventually will have to be relocated to provide the service that, again, I don't know his name, the fellow who was up on Stein Road, the service that he is requesting, demanding, and needs is actually deserves. Right now, the fire station is in pretty much the geographic center of the township, but growth is happening in the corners of the township, and we need to cover those corners. We have the fire. If in the committee, you will see that the fire station. We talked about purchasing land on the west side of further west on Jackson Boulevard to provide for coverage there, and then we also talked about having to move the station, the current station, further north and east, I believe. But again, this is not. But that third station, we're not going to abandon the Zeebrode station in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. That's probably 20 years out. So, and by then it'll probably need to be remodeled again. It was 32. It was 32 years, I think, from the time the building was built to the time it required or had any maintenance done on it. 32 years. The front wall was collapsing, so we had to do something. But that station will need to move in, I don't know, pick a number, 20 years, 25 years. But we do need to expand. We everyone, of course, everyone wants to have fire coverage, wants to have the firemen show up or the firefighters show up. As soon as they hang up the 911 call, they want the firefighters there. And that, of course, can't happen, but we have to take it step at a time. We can't build 3 or 4 fire stations in 1 year. We have to take it one step at a time. And as the chief said, the maximum millage, I think, for operations is what, 3.5, and currently it's at 135. So I think, as the chief said, it's going to go from 135 to maybe it's 1.5, then 1.7, and then 2.1, and then 2.3 as we add staff. And we definitely do need staff. We can't just add bunks to the current fire station. The fire station maximum population is 4 firefighters. That's all we can have. And so in order to provide coverage for the rest of the township or for other areas of the township, we either have to expand that building, which probably doesn't make sense because it's not in the right location now. It was then, but it is not now. So we definitely need another building. So it's not like tomorrow we're going to abandon Zeebrode. We really did need to spend that $2.5 or $3 million to refurbish that building in order to provide service, in order to keep our firefighters safe in their beds, as well as when they're out fighting fires. So I am in support of this, and I absolutely understand how people are baffled by why the number needs to, I guess, in all respect, almost triple, because we haven't given them the facts. So I think it's incumbent on the board to take that information that Mark Perry has compiled and give it to the people and let them see that there is actually justification for the millage that's going to be, hopefully going to be on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised at this time.
Unless someone in the room is moved to speak who hasn't yet spoken, please come up.
Hi, my name is Mike Clancy, with 5572 Gallery Park Drive. I've lived in Scio Township for last 26 years. I'm retired from the University of Michigan. And I appreciate our first responders 100%. I'm thankful I haven't had to use your services, but I am kind of, I got the notice like everyone else. I'm concerned about it. I think that the interest rates are kind of high right now. I don't know how that plays into your issuing bonds for construction. It's kind of an odd time to actually do this, but I guess my larger concern is that there are other residents of Scio Township, low-income residents, minority residents, other retirees that really can't afford, the increase in taxes. We're looking at a 3.75 millage. We're looking at a 5% assessment increase. I don't know how anybody else at that level can afford it. We're going to have many new neighbors building $700,000 flammable structures that they don't have a problem with it. But I also am concerned about what this does. I mean, housing affordability is at an all-time low. What does that do for our township in terms of maintaining any diversity we have, much less increasing it? It's it's certainly a wealth inequity, inequality across the board there. So I appreciate what this township does as opposed to other townships I've looked at. I think Pittsfield actually, but I think the board really needs to listen to all the voices that you've heard tonight. It's not easy. It's a tough question, but I think we, as residents, we need to have more information before we actually can vote. And at this point, I'm a no vote in November. But I'm open to being educated and convinced otherwise. And that's up to the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Please come on.
Thank you. Vic Cooper Wasser, 3285 Cottontail Court. Hitting this cold tonight, hearing about it for the first time. I agree, need a lot more information. Some simple benchmarking information. Correct me if I'm wrong. 23-24 budget. It's what, 2.1 million for the fire department? 2.3, okay. Population 18,000. I think Lyon Township population about 21,000. Budget a couple of years ago was 1.7. These are just numbers, you can just Google it right away. I'm just trying to get a 50,000 foot view of costs, population, because in hearing your presentation, I get the impression that the need is there because of population increase. And so I just want to get a better sense of that. And I also think there was there a consolidation study done in 2012 that consolidating the Dexter system with Scio Township. And I don't know if there are any cost efficiencies or if that just died or was rejected or whatever. But that kind of information, high level, we just need to have a lot more basic information so that we can be better educated when it comes time to vote. And that's my request. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Unfortunately, this is a little out of character for me, but I just gotta speak. So, Chris Severa, 2159 Zeeb, just up street. Probably 37 years, 38 years here. Raised my entire family here. Unfortunately, you got I wholeheartedly support what you want to do. The only problem is, I think you may, as a fire department, have to fall on the sword for the dysfunction of Scio Township. And anybody knows, you have to get your house in order before you ask for anything. His program, what he wants to do is spread over quite a few years. That's great. I just think you're asking for it too early, that you guys have got to get your house in order. And then once you prove yourselves to the residents of Scio, then maybe we would consider, giving up the millage. I'm just shocked. I don't know. I owned my own business for years. I never could have got away with it. I had to run a good business, and that's about it. I really think you give it a couple years, let them get their act together, and then come back, and people would have a little more confidence. That's just my opinion. Thanks.
Second, thank you, Brent.
Is there anyone else present who would like to speak during the public hearing? In that case, if someone's ready to make a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
The motion would be to close the public hearing on the special assessment district for fire protection and emergency medical services made by Flintoff, supported by Riser. Please call the roll.
Rizzo,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Riser,
Yes.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Flintoff, yes. Motion passes. Public hearing closed at 9:13 p.m.
Sure, let's take a brief break, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. Please, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for, if you want us to continue talking, please take the conversation outside.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not worried about that.
We're gonna try and get the meeting started again.
Are we at the G3?
We need to
Yeah.
get right back. Okay, I mean, whatever.
All right, so we are back in session. We're back in session, and it's new. We don't have any unfinished business. We have new business. And the first item is K3, I believe.
No, G2.
Oh, do we
She
move?
has to have that moved.
So we're gonna go K3, G2, G5. I think it will at least.
You wanted that.
Actually, I think we did agree to put the ones from consent
Okay,
agenda at the top of new
okay, you had just
business.
said before GCSI, but that's fine.
Yeah.
So whichever order you want, Will.
Well, let's do that. Let's, I'm reminded
wanna
that
go
we did
G2?
agree to that. So yeah, so G2
Okay,
be the authorization of the MTA annual dues and contribution to legal defense fund. And we pulled this from the consent agenda at the request of trustee Carrie.
I'm sorry, Donna was talking to me, so I missed that. I'm sorry.
G2.
G2, the one of the two that you asked to move from the consent agenda. This is
Some Michigan Township Association.
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, so the reason why I pulled this is because I signed up for a class for tomorrow, actually, at noon. Okay, so in here, there's the $8,000 for dues. But then we have options for, this is for online learning subscription options. And I would like to see at least maybe the essentials and this promoted among our committees, our staff, and also our board to start taking classes that the MTA offers. We have a lot of opinions and without the facts, and the MTA provides a lot of information. I read everything that they send. I look forward to it. But even if it's just the essentials, I don't know what that's gonna cover, but to get this out to our committees and volunteers, I think that would be a great service.
To remind everybody of the opportunity and how to sign up?
Well, I think
There's
there's
an additional cost you're proposing.
yeah, the additional cost. I don't know what these different packages are, but I think, even if we looked at, maybe the essentials, what that offers, and if it covers, so we don't have to, I want to promote education. And so that way we're not paying per individual because it's gonna add up.
Sure. Jillian, it has not added up to $750
No,
yet.
we haven't told people that you can take classes.
Sure. I'm with you on promoting the classes, but I would suggest that we stick with the 25 per until we get to the point where it looks like the 750 is going to be a deal.
Okay, how are we gonna get this out that there's classes through the MTA, that the volunteers, committee members, and staff can take these?
The liaisons, I would be willing to say something to LTC, to
I'll-
PPP.
And I can prompt email and all the
I
liaisons
would
can
do
push
my
it.
part in sharing the.
Yeah, and I mean, just basic OMA, everybody's confused about it and what to do, minutes, I mean, if that's just one class, but there's all different kinds of classes.
Sure.
I would have loved to take the SAD class. I mean, it's the special assessment class.
So I'll make a commitment to pushing out the information. I don't think it's necessary to add on the extra
Okay.
cost right now. They have us, we are capped out at the highest level that they charge Township, so.
Okay.
So if there's a need in the future, we could
Yeah.
add.
We could add that on.
See how
Yeah.
everybody
If there's
responds.
take up.
Okay.
Yep.
Add it when a person signs up.
So
You just pay for the membership.
given that, are we ready to move the motion to authorize $8,776.62 from budgeted funds in 101-101-958 for the annual dues and contribution to legal defense fund of the Michigan Townships Association, MTA.
I would so move.
Moved by Riser, support by Palmer. And this is, has a cost associated with it, so please call the roll.
Brazeau,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Riser,
Yes.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Flintoff, yes, motion adopted 6-0. G5 is next.
Yes, thank you. So this is the educational reimbursement request for Christy Aiken, office coordinator, and again, trustee Carol.
I am in full support of Christy and what she's doing regarding her education, and I would have a recommendation here. There was something that came through the MTA or the GCIS or something. There's a bill in the works for, I believe it's police training, that when a municipality pays for that police training, that employee or the trainee must have a contract to stay with that municipality for, I don't know how long it is, but we need to have something in our personnel handbook.
So that's a great point, and we do, in fact.
We do.
Yes, Joyce or Christy, can you remind me, there is the requirement that the employees stay on.
Yeah, I don't have the handbook.
I don't have it in front of me either, but I believe it's at least a year or so.
I would have to look. I mean,
Yeah,
I can go and get the.
But we do have that policy, I guess that's the point.
Is
Yeah.
it 1 year? Because I know that the fire,
I can't remember what it is.
firefighters coming, training, and then going to Ann Arbor.
Yeah, no, I know that Mark, Christy, and I have reviewed this. I'm just not remembering, but I think it's at least 12 months. Yeah,
Information for you. It would be great, thank you.
okay.
Well, I noticed that we lack a model motion. Would someone like to formulate
Sure.
a motion?
I would like to make a motion to authorize the expenditure of up to $3,200 to reimburse Christy Aiken for the educational request presented here, payable from 101-101-960.
So moved by Flintoff,
Support by Riser.
support by Riser. Please call the roll.
Brazeau?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Riser?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Flintoff? Motion passes. Thank you for your work, Christy.
Thank you very much.
So that brings us to K3. This is authorization to file suit against Custom Design Security for breach of contract. I think all the members of the board received, should have received a communication from the township attorney regarding this. If there are any questions.
Just a quick question. Did we try, before we go through that, pursuit that paradigm, have we tried just contemplating just handing it to a collection agency and having them collect the money? I mean, you don't only get 50% of it, but they're pretty. Are you gonna spend more money on the attorney fees than you are versus a collection agency? I guess that'd be my only.
Yeah.
My only.
We haven't, I can double check that with our attorney. We're not gonna spend much on attorney fees with this. I will say, this is an old matter that came to light in 2020. We've tried conversations and a letter, and so.
We got all this back. It's really not, a collection will sometimes do these. It's really not a collection agency thing, but there are collection agencies who will chase after breach of contract. But if you're saying, hey, we've already gone through that, we don't think it's gonna be expensive, let's just go for it.
Yeah, our township attorney has advised that this is a pretty small thing and works.
That's fine. Go for it. Get them.
All right, would you like to make the model motion?
Yeah, to get them.
Let's use the model motion, Brazeau. Yeah.
The Old Testament way.
I approve the motion to pursue.
To
authorize legal action against Custom Design Security for breach of contract.
I would support that.
So moved by Brazeau, support by Riser. Do we need a roll call vote for this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion passes. That brings us to, I believe, our presentation by Government Consultant Services, Inc.
The packet had a link to the. Hold on.
I think it's on if you speak right into
Barely. You're screaming.
We can hear
you. Okay, good. I don't know if it's still going out to the public or.
It is.
Yes.
Okay,
Actually, the microphone that's going out to the public is above your head.
okay, so speak like this.
It's all going out to the public. Part of what we struggle with is balancing the audio for people at home with the audio for people here, so.
Well, thank you. It's obviously been a while, and for some of us, never. We've been under contract, I think, since Spalding, back a number of years ago. And for pre-COVID, I think we'd come out, every 3, 4, 6 months or so with kind of an update or presentation or just some exchange. COVID kind of impacted that, of course. And then I think this is our first time back in person since COVID. So I would apologize for not being closer because this is a relationship business. And I live here. So I'm 5 minutes away. And to be honest on that, for me, I know there's always issues. I don't think there's anything more difficult anywhere than being elected locally, because you're so close to the constituency. And the issues are so meaningful to each resident. With social media and everything, I mean, you guys, it's not easy. So at least for me, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate your willingness to serve. You hear it a lot with firefighters and with other folks, but for me, thank you for your service, sincerely. It sounds a little patronizing and perhaps a bit so, but I mean it. Another brief moment like that, if I can. I think I can't imagine a better person for you to hire than Joyce. I mean, I've known Joyce for maybe 20 years. When I saw, maybe more, I don't know, back when I was elected even maybe. We worked with her through a number of local governments. I worked with her at the Department of Treasury when she was there. She is literally a renowned local government expert in local government finance, local government operations. Then when I see, you know, in the reports that some lady named Joyce Parker was hired, it can't be the same one. I mean, this lady's all over the state. And it was. So again, it is a bit pandering and patronizing probably, but I'm thrilled that she's working with us. So congratulations to you and congratulations to Joyce. So this is to some extent introductory because, you know, a lot of us have never worked together, perhaps haven't met. And again, I apologize for that, but I wanted to come in and introduce me and GCSI. You pay us to, you know, to be your advocates in Lansing, to work closely with your elected leadership in Lansing, and we do that. But I think you need to have a chance to, you know, and we'll do a better job of that going forward, I think, especially now. There's actually 11 of us at GCSI who do this work for you at different times. A fellow named John Horford's been with me at a couple of meetings with your elected leadership and staff. Another fellow named Dwayne Gill works with us on some of these issues. Barb Farah. So there's several of us that do this work on your behalf. I live here, so it's easy for me to come to a meeting, and I can be anywhere you want, you know, because I live here. So if any of you want to get together after we have this conversation tonight, just to have a better exchange, to be sure we work for the board as a whole. We try to work through the elected, full-time elected leadership, and probably now with Joyce, we'll probably work a little bit more through her, through the elected leadership. But I always want to be responsive to any elected official, especially you know, as one of your constituents and as somebody under contract with you. So if anybody wants to get together, give me a call. You know, I'm only a few minutes away. So we could do it at a local coffee shop, local restaurant, wherever you want. At the conference room here, doesn't matter. So that's kind of GCSI. We're probably by most measurements the largest lobby firm in Lansing. I like to say consultant, but let's be real, we're lobbyists. You know, I'd like to avoid that because the connotation of a lobbyist anymore isn't always what we'd hope to be. I figure, you know, I'm a member of the bar, so I've, you know, and I've sold real estate at once upon a time. And if anybody's got that path to AG double toothpick, I probably, with my career, have a pretty good start on it. In Lansing, as you know, the legislature and the government is pretty much Democratic right now, but only marginally so. And so that has created some real interesting dynamics, some opportunities, perhaps. The last 6 months especially have been busy because the government hasn't been fully Democrat like this since I first went to Lansing in 1982, 1983 for 40 years. So you've seen a flurry of activity. There's probably not been a more active and by some measure productive legislature maybe ever. You look down the list of accomplishments, and it depends on what whether you look at it as an accomplishment or something different, but all the stuff on economic development, all the stuff on organized labor, all the stuff on gender and civil rights sort of activity, all the stuff on reproductive rights and reproductive health, criminal justice reform. You look, that is a really massive undertaking, plus the expenditure of a lot of the ARPA funds and surplus over the last 6 months. It has been a really intense 6 months. There's been a lot of activity. So it's been intense. Right now, they're about ready to finish the budget. The budget, and what I did is I passed out that sheet because I think what it offers is a snapshot, a view of where the money comes from at the state level and where it goes. Now, it looks busy, but it's the easiest one I've ever seen to follow. So, and I have several others if people need one. If you want.
If anyone in the audience would like, there's a few extra copies. We've got one already.
But I would point out maybe just a couple of things that may be of interest, and it kind of gives you a feel how to read it. First of all, you notice at the top, this does not include any of the federal money. This is all state revenue sources. So if you go to the bottom and you see a total state expenditure of 45.1 billion, there's about another 40 billion coming from the feds that are not accounted for in here. And to be fair, a lot of it's healthcare, that's probably the largest, the lion's share of federal money, but there's a lot of other resources as well. You look at, for example, I think there's been a lot of tax reform over the last decade. One of the things that when I was elected on the east side of the county, on the legislature, there was much greater usage of business taxes to fund state government. You look up in that top left corner, for example, what comes from business tax now, it's pretty marginal. And you see when you do the math, they're still giving out about 500 million annually in tax credits. So you do the arithmetic and you get to 1.4 billion out of 80 billion in spending at the state level comes from the business tax. It's pretty marginal. People, you go down, and I'm just picking out a couple of things that people tend to ask about. You go down about 2/3 of the way down on the whole left side is the taxes and the revenues. The middle section, like it says, is major funds, and then it goes over to the right and shows where it's split up into the different budgets. But you go about 2/3 of the way down, you can see lottery, 1.2 billion now from the lottery. But then you go over to the school aid fund where it goes to, the school aid fund is 16 billion. So while everybody says, how come the lottery doesn't pay for schools? Well, it helps, and you don't want to do without it, but it's not a big piece of the puzzle. It's significant, but it certainly doesn't fund education. You go down to fuel and how we do transportation. You can follow those arrows across near the bottom in the orange colored boxes. You can see we're still heavily reliant on fuel taxes and registration fees. Obviously with the taxable event, I used to chair the tax committee when I was a legislator. And what you look for when you're doing tax policy to some extent is the appropriate taxable events that you want to use, that you want to impact with a tax code in order to draw revenue. The taxable event for the fuel taxes is a sale of a gallon of gas. So as we all know, as cars become efficient, as we move to electrification and other things like that, the number of gallons has diminished that we sell. And that's had a huge impact on the transportation fund.
I mean this in all due respect, but you've been speaking for 15 minutes.
I'm sorry.
No, nothing wrong with that, but you've told me literally, I don't mean any offense, but you're supposed to be telling me how you're helping Scio.
Okay.
I have not heard one thing
Okay.
that tells me how you're helping Scio.
Okay, sorry. So we've had a pretty good, maybe what we started with, what brought us to Scio was when folks were trying to put oil wells in the township. That brought us initially to Scio. As a firm, I was involved with the, I think it was COFBY, that group initially participated with them financially because we wanted to keep the oil wells out of Scio Township, and I wanted to keep it out of my backyard, to be honest. So that's what initially brought us to Scio, I think, as a firm. Since then, we were been immersed in Gelman. In the context of Gelman, and I've been involved with that for 40 years, but on behalf of Scio, there were 5 things that we tried to achieve in the context of state engagement on that issue. One was to reduce the parts per billion as a standard. It was 85 when we started. It's now down to 7.5, 7.2. And we're exploring whether we can take that another step. The other 4 components to that Gelman activity that we did with the DEQ back when it was DEQ, where we wanted a contingency plan in case it reaches the river. We wanted more transparency out of Gelman with the data that they give. We wanted the Attorney General to be more representative of who we think are the victims, which is not the department, not the DEQ, but it's those of us who live here.
Okay, so you just named 3 things: 85 to 72. You named going, the river, possible permutation of the river. What of those actions? What did you do that was directly responsible for those, or did those happen on their own?
Every one of them. We were the lead advocate in bringing the group together from this community to compel those 5 issues. Every one of them. The other ones were, I forget where I stopped, but usable data. Getting the opportunity for Scio Township, Ann Arbor, the county, and here in River Watershed Council to be litigants, so they could be at the table for the negotiation. Now, what I was going to say was that it hasn't really been executed as we would hope. I mean, we did achieve the lower standard of 7.2. The other four, I think, have kind of the execution of them hasn't been what we expected. So we're actually talking to Kathy Knoll, Will, and some of your team here to revisit that, get the team back together, and see if we can't get the Attorney General and the rest, and now Eagle, to revisit those four and get better response.
And what do you, and again,
This is fine.
I'm just trying to.
I'd rather have the exchange.
So I guess I would confer with, Kathy's not here to say, okay, I understand you were part of that, but we
let it.
What's that?
We let it.
You let it?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to mix words there. We led the effort. They were going to delist the site. We got wind of it. We brought the team together, and we met with Dan Wyant at the time with that team and had those 5 points. Now, 4 of them, I think we need to readdress, and perhaps the 5th one, the parts per billion.
Yeah, I wish Kathy was here so I could just get her thoughts on that. So we've got, so that's kind of some historical background. We've got Scio Township. Right now we're, call it, fiscal quarter, Q second half, H2 of 2023 and 2024. Where do you see your value add in the next, let's call it 18 months?
It's a great question. We're going to look to the leadership here to describe what you want. What we've done, I don't know if you want to hear the history, but I'll continue it anyway.
No, I'm more interested actually in what we're gonna do, because I can't fix history, but I can fix going forward. So you give me some history, which is good.
Well, I think the history is important, and I don't want to quibble with you, but I live here. And the reality is that we brought 3.2 million for the 2 parks grants. I think that's a pretty good return on investment.
No disagreements, but again, that's already kind of done, right? I'm trying to look at what's going forward, and I don't mean it negative. I don't mean it in a negative or aggressive manner. I really don't. I'm just trying to say, hey, is there a project? Hey, we've identified these 3 things, Mark, that we think we can save you $5 billion or 10 million. And if you're saying, hey, you haven't given us any prices, it's incumbent on us to identify something.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to hear more about it, but we took a run, and we're not done with it at the fire station.
Okay, so that's one.
Yeah,
Okay.
we identified 6.5 that we're going to pursue at the state level. We've met with Sue Schenk, Kerry Reingans. They didn't include it in their list of top priorities, but we're going to revisit that. We met with Debbie Dingle and her staff. They had explored whether they'd include 2 million from them. It did not make their list. We're not done with that. So as we look forward, I don't know what our success will be. I mean, when we engage in this stuff, we give it the best run we can. And if we succeed, we do. If we don't, we don't. But that's on our target list, is what can we do with the state to leverage the taxpayers and your support for that fire station.
So, okay, so I guess and that's great. That's step 1. I guess what I'm looking for is here's a definitive list. I just looking for something that's kind of, I don't want to say binary, but something that's measurable, right? Here's this list. We think, Mark, we can save you, save Scio Township $5 million. I'm gonna make up a number. And I understand you're not gonna get them all. I understand you got X amount of control. I got it. Your success rate's 50%, let's even say, which would be great, by the way. That'd be $2.5 million. That'd be fantastic. I'm just trying to look for, how do I measure your organization going forward, right? How do I know what success is? And B, what do I know? What are the leading indicators of the success? Because I don't want to wait till all 18 months to decide whether we made it or not. I want to have some kind of leading indicators along the way that tell me we're making progress. And if we owe you that list, then that's on us. Maybe it's our fault to owe you that list, and that's okay. Then we have our work cut out for us. So I'm not trying to throw it on you. Maybe I'm just trying to come up with a plan.
Can I jump in? Is that okay, Kirk?
Sure.
I mean, what I want to say is, thank you for being here. We met, I think, once before COVID, and I've been on the board since 2019, right? Wacky time, right? And so what I appreciate your coming here, and what I hope that this is the beginning of with Joyce here as well, is for us to figure out what our list is, because we don't have a policy priority list, a legislative priority list. We have never had that conversation as a board.
Okay.
So there's been, things popped up. And then when the GCSI contract came up and we started having this discussion of like, okay, well, what services do they provide? We were all so unplugged, Kirk, from what was going on, we've heard, something about the Parks grant. We've had so much turnover at this board level too. So what I would ask for from you and Joyce and all of us to put our heads together around is, how are we gonna have a quick down and dirty process to come up with a good policy priority list? Because it sounds like the levers that you can move are at the state level, right? And
Yeah, and
a
we
little bit on
try
the
to,
feds.
we try to help on facilitate regionally. As well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think if we look at like which of our issues actually, have levers at the state level, or some of our federal reps, come up with a policy legislative agenda, and I do think that's on us. I defer to Kirk and Joyce if you have a good model for coming up with that or what that looks like. And then the second thing is, then it's about implementation and measuring.
Yeah, no, I agree. So
What we're
maybe-
getting, but we have not asked you. This board hasn't had a conversation about what our priorities are. The capital question for the fire is a good one, yes. But we never talked about that. So we need to figure out, and
So-
Joyce, do you have any thoughts about how we might approach that?
Well, actually, I did meet with Kurt, last week, we talked about it. Well,
Good.
actually, it was Monday.
Yeah.
About putting together that plan, because, that conversation hasn't taken place, and, we did talk about some examples, but I do believe we need to pull together, some information from our elected officials, from the staff, in terms of what some of our priorities should be, meet with them, kind of fine tune the list in terms of actually prioritizing that list.
Yeah, because we don't have a list right now. Is that true?
Yeah, well, if I could just interject, this board did task trustee Knoll and myself with communicating with GCSI together, and we have been
Yeah.
for several months. And so it's not as if there hasn't been any effort in this direction.
No, there has been.
We worked really hard together with Chief Hood on putting together some grant applications for both state and federal funding for the second fire station and for the equipment for it. We were hopeful, but we didn't make it this time, these particular rounds, these budget rounds. Trustee Knoll is deeply involved and has been for years with the Gelman effort on behalf of the township. So that was sort of naturally an area where we were looking again to GCSI to provide some support. And so that's one thing that we have been trying to move forward. And I think GCSI is working on pulling together, like you were saying, Kirk, pulling together the different players, the different municipalities that are impacted by the Gelman.
Yeah, I thought is, I think with your, you and Kathy, I mean, your request, I think initially was a couple months ago to see if we can't reduce that 7.2 to a more, to a better number and put more pressure on the court to give us, the kind of rulings that we want. Then we revisited the 5-point plan that we don't think was properly executed, especially more recently. And the thought was, well, let's put the 4 litigants together, especially, and get unity, kind of a unified approach to this thing. It's awkward if you got one litigant going this way and another one going this way and this way. If we can get some unity on what the plan is again, where do we want to take that 7.2? Do we want to put more pressure on the AG to really represent the local communities? What do we want to do with Gelman in terms of transparency of the data? Do we want to force DEQ or Eagle to get us a contingency plan? Those kind of things, and revisit that 5-point plan and see where we want.
But I think the point that Clerk made, I think is we're spot on, and that is, what are the things where we can, the issues that matter to Scio Township, where we, with your help, can leverage primarily state action, whether it's,
Get traction.
whether it's some kind of financial support, or whether it's changes in policy.
Or, and I guess I'd ask too, Kirk, and these are good examples. I'm just trying to get to know GCSI. So I mean, there's so many issues. I mean, you know, earmarks are kind of the straightforward one, right?
Yeah.
All right, but then, and then supporting legislation, authoring legislation. Have you helped somebody like Scio Township and like pulling together legislation, or is it just?
Oh, yeah, yeah, we do a lot of local government work and we initiate, we try to block, I mean, to be honest,
Yeah.
on behalf of local governments and on behalf of Scio,
Yeah.
over the last number of years with different majorities,
Right.
a lot of it was defense.
Of
There was a
course.
lot of effort, as you saw, to preempt local government decisions.
Mhm.
And now with the current majorities, there's an opportunity to restore local government options and different things. You know, you've seen it with the plastic bag issue and different things like that.
And then what about elections? Are you guys involved in that?
Immersed. We actually, as you may know, we represent the Clerks Association, so we're
Yes.
immersed.
Yeah, we
and-
just got the whole bunch
we have,
of bills
Bill
out, which is
Zagman.
exciting.
Yeah, Bill Zagman in our office is literally an expert in advocacy on behalf of the clerks.
Good.
So
Okay.
if, especially for you, we could put you together with Bill and make sure that you're adequately informed of what's happening, because there is a flurry of activity you've seen.
Yeah, and the
over
Clerks
last couple
Association
weeks.
does a great job on that front.
So, yeah, but if there's specific, you know, issues that you have, I mean, one of the things we want to make sure we do is represent you. So.
So Kirk, would
Right
it
on.
be fair to say, no, keep it
No,
short.
I'm not, I'll just put my hand up for the next.
Okay.
You know, take it.
So is it fair to say, it's, again, I love the idea that for every dollar we spend, you save us $3. Believe me, I love that ROI. So don't misconstrue my, you know, directedness for aggression. So it sounds like it's incumbent on us to say, here's some ideas that we have that we think we want, right? You guys have those ideas. You're gonna come back and say, yeah, this one's good, maybe this one not so much, right? And you guys commence, and I just want to kind of formulate a plan, and then somehow we're gonna measure the success. I just like things that we can kind of track along the way.
No, I like that.
Yeah, and anytime, again, we spend $1 and you give us $3. rock
That
on,
always
let's
happens,
go.
but, you know, to be fair, you know, what we saw with Donna, and I want to give her a lot of credit, Donna Lazinski, she was the minority leader, and we saw an opportunity to have some bolder vision than we might otherwise have, because there's so much money at the state right now. We wanted to get a piece of it, and we did. I mean, I think when we put this group together on that occasion, when I talk about, you know, local and regional kind of facilitation, we had MDOT involved, but we also had the Washtenaw County Road Commission involved. We had county parks. We had all these folks that were coming to put that plan together. So a lot of what we do is just that facilitation, watching for an opportunity. Some of this stuff just arises. You know, you see something going on. For example, I met today with, and I suspect at some point in the future, this is going to be an issue for you folks, but that whole notion of dark stores. I gotta believe at some point that's going to be an issue for the township, because you got these big boxes that.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask in this forum, but yeah.
So I met with Senator Ed McBroom today. I said, where are you at with this thing? And because I want to be in position. So a lot of what we're doing is being in position. So when you got an issue,
right,
we're ready to roll.
So Trustee Riser, you had wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, a dark store is where, a dark store, just summarizing, is a large store that costs a lot of money to build, and it has great value, but they value it as if it's an empty box, and they want low taxes, and they fight them. And we have
It's been an issue.
a couple here.
Yeah,
So,
and they win at the tribunal. So we're
Yeah,
trying, we got to do something
yeah,
legislatively.
well, we got Perry there now to have her back.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. Yeah,
So,
Mark is a longtime friend, so I'm hoping.
How, do you have any recommendations for us of how we best help you, letting us know what we want? Like, do we have a policy committee? Like, what are some best practices for a local government to think of what it's important to us to advise you, so you can go out and get us the grant money, or you can go out and help us with legislation, or you can light a fire under Dana Nestle's butt and her staff with respect to the Eagle with the consent judgment number 4. And I don't mean Dana Nestle, I mean,
I hear you.
I don't mean Brian Nagel either, but I do.
Yeah.
But so how advocate for grants, for money for the best opportunities for legislation, or that, how do we?
I like to have a little bit of all of it, to be honest, just in our quiver to play. Especially, to be honest, you know, I was an elected Democrat, so I'm probably a little easier with these majorities for me. So, you know, we got at least another year and a half. I want to play some offense. I want to have a real aggressive agenda. I don't want to create false hope or false expectations that we can deliver. But you can't give me too aggressive an agenda. Let's see what we can do.
So what opportunities are there with this legislature for things that matter to local governments, specifically Scio? Polluter pays big with us, it might not be out. So, are there other opportunities for local governments to get legislation through? And what do you think those are?
Yeah, I'd have to give it some thought. I mean, I'll think of all that stuff that they preempted you from doing. You know, all this, you know, gun control, plastic bags, all that stuff that the previous majorities prohibited a local government from regulating. And I don't know if you want to get into that stuff, but just as an example.
One that's happening right now that's a little troubling.
Yeah, the gravel pits.
The gravel.
There you go.
pits,
Yeah.
But it's
it's
the
happening.
legislature that you're describing that's actually
Why are they doing that?
moving that forward.
It's big money to what it is. It's
Yeah, it's always big money.
Imagine that.
Let me ask, do you represent gravel?
So what do you think? I mean, what's the hope?
Well,
of
they had a
finding
hearing
out?
today. I was there. They had a hearing today. I was actually there at the committee on another issue, but they had a hearing on it today and they couldn't move the bill. They've been trying for about 6 years to preempt local governments from, you know, they want to put the regulation of that away from local governments back at the state. They haven't been able to find the votes. And it's a mix. It's not a partisan issue. It's a mix of Republicans and Democrats who are for and a mix of Republicans and Democrats who are against.
Is it like city versus country? Is it rural versus?
It's more, it's an interesting mix. Labor is supportive of the preemption because they want the construction jobs. The environmental groups and the local government groups are big time opposed. Road builders are in support because they think they get a better price on the aggregate. So it's a mismatch, you know, it's not traditionally aligned interests who have come together or either in support or opposition.
And is polluter pay being introduced? Do you have any beat on that?
Yeah, I think it has a real chance, just because of these majorities. You know, that was actually passed, I mean, Lana Pollock, you know, was the author. And then it was adjusted under England to the detriment of, you know, victims of pollution. I think there is a chance now to address it. It'll be interesting to see how everybody goes. You know, there's a lot of folks in Lansing who are spending big dollars to assist, you know, corporate interests. I don't know how much they're aligned now with some of those corporate interests on these issues or not, but there's going to be a lot of pressure, you know, from the environmental groups and a lot of us who are victims of that.
How about seeking grants? Are there some things that we should be doing to seek out grants for specific areas, whether it's in transportation or whether it's fire or whether it's sewer build out or water build out or whether it's bike lanes or whether it's environmental or?
Yes, and yes.
How do we know what to strive for?
What I typically want to do, and this is what we did with the two pedestrian pathway grants, is it's like, tell me what you want. And let's go see where we might fit that in. Because there's infrastructure money now, there's road money, there's economic development money, there's recreation money, there's all kinds of money at the state now, and it's not going to be there forever, but it is there right now. And some of it is going to be put in big pots then for the departments to figure out who gets their piece.
Yeah, so I think
Right, just a
like
wish
for me,
list.
I'd be interested in staying apprised of kind of like where that's falling out, you know, whether it's, you know, housing or, you know,
Yes.
infrastructure, whatever it is, kind
Yeah.
of the big ideas, right? But we really do need
I mean,
policy priorities here, and we haven't had that kind of conversation. So I think we need to do that. I'd also be interested in staying apprised of, the revenue sharing. There was some, I think,
Yeah, you're in good
tinkering here and there. And at one point during COVID, there was a little more for a certain purpose. So I'm interested.
Yeah,
in
just
learning
for
more
your
about
planning
what
purposes, you're on the
influences
edge of a really nice revenue sharing piece this year. You're
Right.
probably gonna get 5% in the base and another 5% one time, so that's 10. You're likely to get a piece for public safety, likely 2 in the base, so to speak, and 5% one time. So, you put that together, that's 17%.
that. And I'd like to, offline, let's follow up on that. I want to confirm that because we had
Okay.
that discussion
We'll
at
know,
budget time.
and we'll know better probably within a week.
Okay.
Because those negotiations are they did their targets, as Joyce can probably explain better about target, but the legislature and the governor get together and identify the target for each budget. Then the subcommittee chairs get those targets and they figure out some of the details. That is going to happen this week and next, and they could finish the budget next week. And I can tell you with certainty what your number is going to be on revenue sharing.
That's why John, your colleague isn't here.
John Horford.
Yeah, you explained that he had to stay up in Lansing.
Well, he's with a group of legislators tonight.
He's working on getting.
Yeah, and I would have, you wanted it. So, yeah, I think, in terms of next steps, I'd love to get together with the, as many as we can. I know you got open meeting act problems, and I can get together with some of you individually as well to know what your individual priorities are. We match them up with what the board is or whatever. And because we do want to reflect the board as a whole, and let's see what the state can do. I think we got probably another, this money, it can't get all spent that quickly. It may get appropriated to a department as a grant fund or something, but let's figure out what the priorities are for the township and say, hey, it didn't go to Lansing, get some leverage on this stuff.
Exactly it. We need to plan.
So
And I've been, sorry, yeah. Yes, and priorities. And priorities and planning, and we talked about that with getting the other committees together, the planning commission and whatnot, but I think that this may be even a work session.
Yeah, so something like that, because we haven't, I have felt like we have not utilized your services to the extent that we could. Over the last few years. And it's just because we've, so much has been going on in the world, but Joyce, if you could put some thought into kind of how we come up with that plan, that would be great.
You can't,
Let me take a look at it and maybe touch base with Will, because it sounds like Will and Kathy has been the lead individual, so maybe we can
Yes,
get together.
absolutely. It
put
sounds like
something
there's a
together and
short
get
list
back to you.
already.
Well,
Yes, and regular reports.
Yeah.
On this, please.
So yes, I think maybe that's a good way to wrap this up, is to emphasize what Kirk was saying, I think a few minutes ago. And that is, what we really need is a list of all the different things that the township has as things that we're going after in one way or another, so that you're informed about what our priorities are, but also so that you can respond to opportunities as they present themselves.
That's essentially how we did those 2 pedestrian path grants, to be honest. We looked at different things you had going on and then talked to Donna to see what floated her boat, and it looked like we could do something with those. That it wasn't that was necessarily probably, I don't know if it was the top priority of the township, but it was a moment in time of opportunity. So we took it.
So are Carrie or Felicia or Jeff or somebody locally that we might be able to reach to, are they?
Oh, yeah.
Are they,
Yeah.
do they have, should we reach out to Felicia for a certain kind of funding, or Carrie for a certain kind of funding or should we have our committees, like we've got Parks and Pathways, we've got a Road Advisory Committee, we've got Land President, like how do we know what's available to go for?
I don't know if you ever can, and I don't even always know what's available. Typically, like with that pedestrian path thing, just to use that as an example, I didn't know where we were gonna get the money. But I said, what do you got going on that we could explore? And I took it to Donna. We took her a couple different things. I can't remember what the other ones were, but we took a couple things, and she said, I think I can do something on this.
Multiple. In
So-
fact, the thing that we brought to her was, one of the things we brought to her was the fire station. And we just didn't, I think she probably could have done something, but she just ran out of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's almost, there's so much money scattered through these departments, you almost can't know.
Yeah, so let's set this out, because it's getting late. We owe you a list, a wish list, our fantasy list.
A
And I guess-
priority list, not
Well-
just kind of like, you know,
Well-
we'll do something if we had money to do it, you know?
Well, yeah, of
Yeah,
course, right? And then you're probably gonna come back to that list and you'll do your own stack rank and say, that's impossible, maybe, let me take a swing, could be an opportunity. Something that's gonna, those two lists are gonna
Absolutely,
mesh.
yeah.
And then at least we have something to start measuring.
Yeah.
All agree?
I like
Yes.
it. Let me tell you, you cannot wear us out.
With, Will and Kathy to bring something back to the group.
Yeah, this is all,
Thank you, Joyce.
George is gonna do all this work.
Well, she might know where the money is better than I do. I tell you, you hired very well.
I know you don't want to belabor this because it's been going, we've been talking for a while, but actually GCSI assisted me in one community where the community actually won an award nationwide because of the work that was done.
All right.
Award for Scio.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Make your own style, make your own township proud, man.
absolutely, no, I have motivation beyond a contractual relationship. I live here, so, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Kirk, and
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry for the, rough start. I wasn't sure where to go with a presentation.
There's
We've
no
been here so long.
apologies, it's worked out, it's all good. It's all good. No, it's all good.
And maybe next time we'll bring John in, if he's not busy up in Lansing.
I will, for sure.
We'll bring him for the next.
Yeah, you really can't wear us out. I just live 5 minutes away and I can be here as often as you want, and I can meet with any of the individual. I'd actually prefer that, to be honest, because it's a relationship business. I'd rather get to know each of you individually. Typically, we do that in the locals that we work for, and especially if I live here,
Sure, and happy to do that. I also just know that part of our issue has been, we haven't had the board priority, so a little bit of both would probably be good.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thanks for all you do.
Well, that brings us to the ordinance enforcement discussion that you proposed, Mark. So
Yes.
since you proposed it, why don't you frame it for us?
So here's my angst. I mean, obviously I've looked at the communications from Jonathan. I've heard from other folks who said, hey, I've had dogs, they're not on leashes. And it seems like there's just no enforcement, near as I can tell, that's happening. I mean, in my mind, we have ordinances for a reason. And if they're not enforced, then why even bother having them? So, and again, Mark's gut is somebody files a complaint, we should respond in no later than 72 hours, in 3 days. Somebody should be on this. I don't know if there's a list of fines, how we give warnings, whatever the methodology is, or when somebody does disobey an ordinance, what type of, reconciliation would take, but we need to have somebody who's assigned to that. And I don't think it's a supervisor thing. I don't know if it's a Doug thing. It seems like we have to have a person who reports to
It's in the
Joyce.
ordinance.
Yes,
Who can
an ordinance
enforce.
officer reports to Joyce, who is proactive on doing those, and what I've heard.
Well, wait a second. Mark, I just want to make sure you had a chance to say what you were going to say before I respond. So one thing is that statutorily, there are some responsibilities that do reside with the supervisor in terms of enforcement. Obviously, with the township manager, we work together on that. We do have and did have sort of a contractual relationship with Carlisle Wortman to handle some of this. And I think we should differentiate between different kinds of enforcement, right? Because some of the things that we're talking about are zoning enforcement, where it's, conditional use, for example, is what we're talking about with the folks down at the Misty Valley Barns down on Scio Church Road. But, what part of what you're talking about is like other kinds of ordinances, noise complaints or animals let loose or those kinds of things. Blight is another thing where we've been doing a lot of enforcement. And it's kind of a thankless job. It's one of the things that I got involved with almost immediately when I took office. I was touring a site where there was a real problem with blight that neighbors had been complaining about on Wagner in December, within weeks of taking office. And I feel like in some ways, there's a misunderstanding of what the township has been doing. Because we have been working at it and we have been making progress. For example, the complaints about the farms down on Scio Church, up until 2020, up until December of 2020, the township wasn't really taking a firm hand in enforcement with the situation there. And we embarked on a campaign of citing them, those two operations there together for any infraction that occurred. And we actually wrote tickets, and that had not happened before. So there is a kind of stepped up enforcement that's been going on for the past few years. There's a building, an industrial building that was finally demolished after people had been in the township had been fielding complaints about it for over 20 years. Next to the Print Tech, the firm that handles our newsletters. We finally got that. We worked with the county, we coordinated with the county building department, and we got that enforcement together with the county because we had to work with them, and we got that building demolished. So I think there's some big steps that have been taken forward in terms of enforcement, but we also ran up against the problem, and that is that Carlisle Wortman is sort of phasing out of this work in part because the person who is doing it, there's sort of inspector for enforcement, zoning enforcement, retired. So up until recently, they had someone who was tasked with this, and I disagree with some of the comments about Ralph that have been made, but he was getting older and he retired. And so now we need to figure out together what we're going to do. And actually Joyce and I met just last week with Doug. It's in my report, it's mentioned in my report, to talk about this and about the transition and what the time frame is. And Joyce, I don't want to preempt you, but I know have a plan for how to move forward with this, or at least an idea of how to move forward with sort of transitioning from what we have been doing with Carlisle Wortman to something else.
Yeah, clearly you don't know what you're doing, Will.
And I also have some comments on this, but I'll wait my turn until.
Well,
So Joyce, I'd love to hear from Joyce.
Joyce a turn.
Well, we did meet with Doug last week regarding the issue about the ordinance officer through his organization. And so, I had shared with the supervisor that, we can look at maybe a couple of options. One is to actually take a look at various companies that offer that service that has that expertise. That might be one option based on what the cost might be. Another might be actually looking at one of our existing departments to add a person to assist in that regard as well. But I think we need to explore the options, bring back a recommendation, and then move forward with that in a timely manner.
Joyce, that sounds great. My only comment would be, because I don't know, do we get 5 ordinances a day, 50 ordinances a day, violations? I don't know how,
Right.
is it a full-time job, I guess is the question.
All that has to be
Well,
evaluated.
I don't want to cut off Joyce, but I know there are other people who have comments. I think the clerk raised her hand first, and then.
She's spoken once on it, but I'll yield
I
to
haven't.
her. I'll yield to her. I thought you had already talked on it.
I have not. Thank you, John. I'm gonna talk twice as long now.
I apologize.
So, no, I know, I'm teasing you.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say, I agree with Will. There's been a lot of improvement to the enforcement over what we've had before. Now, it is a far cry from where we need to be. So I think both of those are true. We moved the enforcement team. We've got Christy. What does it say outside your cube?
Violations Bureau.
That's right. She is our violations bureau, okay? So there's a lot of pieces to this. This isn't just about who the consultant is. There's a lot of pieces. There are processes that are used, processes that work, processes that need to all come together. And it all starts with our ordinances. And I agree, why have ordinances if we're not going to enforce them? And we've always and I don't want to become a community that's going out looking for problems, right? But when there are problems, we want to be able to address them, and we haven't been able to do that as well as we all want to.
I've been
I think the
complaining
piece-
for weeks. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting now.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. One moment.
I am
So,
complaining for weeks
Jonathan,
and
Jonathan,
nothing happens.
give me a,
I
Jonathan,
can't see him.
no, Jonathan, just give me a, let me finish, Jonathan. So the part of it is the township attorney has done a good job. We transitioned from Lilich to Fink and Fink for the ordinance enforcement. I think that was a good thing. But, right, and I think that also what we need to remember is it's the township ordinance enforcement officer. So we can, I think historically, we've divvied it up between, you know, zoning and not. And I want to look at it a lot of different ways, Joyce, and what I'd like to ideally have is a township ordinance enforcement officer that's mentioned in our ordinances. We've never identified who that is. Be it a contractor, part-time employee, whoever it is, it's got to be somebody who is responsible for then coordinating with the attorney when needed, working with the administrative processes, getting our reporting in, and then importantly, we lose money on enforcement right now. We do not charge, we do not recoup our costs. And so before we get all cowboy about enforcing ordinances here, Jonathan, yours accepted, because that's egregious. We need to make sure that we also adopt the proper schedules to make sure that we're recouping our costs, and then we'll make that its own department. Because when I've gotten asked, what do we spend on code enforcement, this or that? I'm picking it apart, you know, different line items. We don't even have it organized around a budgetary center.
And is it fair to say, Joyce, you've seen this before, seen this, done this, I've done this before? Is this something in your purview that you've done from working in other townships? Like, I know how to put this together, I've done this before.
I have.
Okay, great. Checkbox.
Well, I want to make sure we.
Let's hear from John.
Trustee Riser has a
Yeah,
turn.
but first I want to apologize again that Jessica, I thought you had talked on this issue.
I know,
My apologies.
and I apologize that you thought that. I know, we're good.
And I called Jonathan a week or so, I don't know if it was a week ago, Jonathan, I was on the way back from work and about his perennial yard trash on us. And I called our then ordinance officer and left a message. I left a message for that individual. I don't know if it was my role too, but I know who it was. And I called and I said, hey, you know, can you please call Greenberg? And I don't think that he did. So I'm frustrated as well. And I'm frustrated as frankly, someone who's been in law enforcement for a long time and does enforcement for the city of Ann Arbor. So enforcement, it runs the gamut. It's noise, it's blight, it's zoning, it's dog at large, it's fire code violations, it's criminal stuff, it's speeding, it's traffic. And we have an ordinance as far as not recouping. And we've got section 1-7 that talks about it. But as far as who can enforce it currently, and maybe we need to address this, municipal civil infractions, citations, the following personnel in the township have the authority. The Washtenaw County Sheriff, so we could get the sheriff to do more of what we pay them to do with respect to either the dog or the speeding or the traffic. It does say the zoning and ordinance enforcement officer. I assume that's Kyle Workman on a contract basis, but I don't know that.
Specifically via a very old resolution.
Okay,
Doug is an individual.
Okay, and then we've got the township supervisor, we've got the township clerk, we've got the director of utilities, we've got a building inspector, whom I understand we don't have one, as we use the county for that, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then we've also got the fire marshal, and I know we certainly have a fire marshal. So I think we should take a look at section 1-8 as to who should be enforcing our ordinances. And whether that list is broad enough, or whether we need to include people in that. And then I think enforcement should be education. Hey, you gotta lock your dog up. Hey, you gotta turn your, and then a notice of violation, and then enforcement. And if we have a contract with somebody to do enforcement, like, don't we have a contract with somebody to do this? Or aren't we working? Then but is the contract kind of, are we working without a contract with our
Yes.
developer?
Yes, and I think that that's
And
part
how
of
long
it,
has that been the case?
years. I don't know how many years before, before I got here, and I think that's part of it, is scoping out what we want I agree with you, that section of the ordinance, who can enforce ordinances is one question, then who do we designate as a code enforcement officer to manage all of it is a different thing. I think we.
Cost recovery.
And then the cost recovery, and I'm happy to help with that piece of it. I think Joyce knows how to pull together the program, but what we don't have, and what I don't think we've ever had here, is a code enforcement program. You know, where we're actually recouping the costs, where it's coordinated, where Christie can, you know, speak to this better than anybody about how it's worked in the past, and have we ever issued fines?
But what right do we have to issue those fines? Isn't that something that's issued by the court?
No, it's in there. We can citation, civil infractions.
Well, I think of a civil infraction as a ticket where you have to appear in court to answer for the violation of the local ordinance. And unless we do it differently here. And then the fines and costs they're split according to the court, the municipality. But like, I don't think we can just decide what we want to charge somebody for an ordinance violation.
Of course, but there's also things such as when we take court action and other things, there's gotta be some fines we can assess as a township. I think there are, John, but we
There are
have to learn
fines
more.
in there.
Well,
Right, but
so
the
the
way
attorneys
to-
have
the way to
succeeded
levy-
in getting some money from.
I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah.
Like, my personal belief is that we need to have somebody on staff or somebody contracted whose raison d'etre is to do this
I
for
agree.
us.
I agree. Completely.
And I'm okay with, we hire a part-time person that used to be a code enforcement somewhere
Sure.
and to see if that works out. Or if we say, Doug, we need help on this, or.
And I'd like to move away from having the same person, the same entity who does our planning, do our
And I'm-
enforcement.
I'm fine with that too.
But I would
Why don't we
refer
let
to,
Joyce, why don't we, Joyce and we'll work together, come up with a plan and let us know, right? I don't want to try to solve this tonight, right?
No, I don't think that's what you were proposing. You were proposing that we have a discussion to sort of get it out, which I think we have.
And elevate that
And
discussion.
then at a future meeting, we'll bring back a proposal, or Joyce will bring back a proposal, and we will then react to an actual concrete
Yes.
list of options, maybe.
And in the meantime, I want to ask you, can somebody go clean up John's?
Yeah, so
Somebody get,
in the-
tell John's trash cleaned up.
no, in
please.
the meantime, seriously, I did have that question. What is the status of that issue and what are we doing?
Well, that was part of our conversation, Joyce and I, with Doug.
The Trailwoods garbage
Yes.
issue.
Well, I know that there was a discussion about Doug actually going out, walking the site with the resident, as opposed to just taking someone's word that it had been resolved. And I don't know if he did that or not, but that's what we requested of him.
Okay, thank you.
And also, what's the name of the guy?
Aaron Cohen.
No, not Aaron, the guy who's doing our temporary guy.
Vibes.
No.
What is it doing?
Cool.
From Carlisle Work.
I'm drawing a blank for some reason,
The
but.
Carlisle Workman.
Enforcement?
Yeah,
Brandon
the
Boggs.
guy. Brandon, that's it,
Yeah.
Brandon.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Brandon was to write up a report of what he had already done, so that we could have it, and I hope to have that for this meeting, but it didn't materialize, but.
See, I just don't think their heart's in it, at Carlisle Workman.
So I
Yeah,
think
we shouldn't.
we were, what Joyce was describing was the outcome of the conversation with Doug that she and I had, was that someone was, whether it was Doug or Brandon, or both of them, were going to go and meet with Jonathan on site and look at the situation with Jonathan, and not just, go and visit and sort of look around and see what they saw.
And I'll say this, Will.
And Ralph, I think Ralph can go out there.
John, hang on a minute. So I will say this. If this is the kind of work and attention to detail that Carlisle Workman gives us, it makes me wonder if we should have a different planning advisor. Like,
Yeah.
why were we using Doug? Why were we using that firm if this is what we're getting on something that's important to a lot of people in this township.
Well,
It's like, just throw out the whole, what's that? I mean,
Yeah, I agree, John. We need to look at our contracts, our non-contracts, these long-time relationships. And I know that Joyce has shared with me, you know, the importance of bidding things out. I agree. That's what we got to do. We all said we were going to bid things out more and get out of these old bad habits of just doing what we did before. Take a fresh look. If the same people want to apply, compete and succeed, then better for everybody.
Call to wrap this up. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, well, I think we have a way forward.
So yeah, you gotta wait for it. Let's let these
Yeah,
two wrap
yeah,
it
this
up.
is-
Okay, let's move on.
Joyce, welcome, solve it.
Go fix
Hey,
that. Joyce.
this is Jonathan. I'm sorry, Joyce, I'd love to meet with you because the information you've gotten so far is so partial and incomplete. They've already come out and picked up garbage one time. This is new garbage. They just refuse to do it. And it's a very simple thing. Doug didn't come out. Doug called them and made them clean it up last time. The fact that there's more garbage now and that we have to start all over is just asinine.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll be happy to talk to you. I'll give you a call when I'm back in town next week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we can move on from this discussion. We have a sort of a way forward. And that brings us to, I believe, unless I'm forgetting something, public comment.
Yep.
So this is the time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of the Board of Trustees. And Trustee Brazo, are you ready to be our timekeeper again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I see one member of the public. Would you?
I would let Jonathan go first, if this is his topic.
Well, I guess we can do it out of order. Usually we go to people who are here physically present first.
Can you let, if he wants to?
Sure,
let him
sure, we can. Jonathan, would you like to go ahead and comment further?
I've already interrupted enough. I've said enough for the night. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I wanted you to have an opportunity.
That's because you're awesome, Kathleen.
Kathleen Brandt, I'm still here. I want to correct some things, or I'm going to ask some questions. The supervisor stated that there are statutory duties in his realm for zoning enforcement. I've reviewed the statute, MCL 4160 through 4169. There is no reference to zoning enforcement. Mr. Hathaway, could you please tell me where you're getting that information, that you have responsibility?
If I said that the supervisor has responsibility for zoning enforcement.
You did. You said you had statutory.
I think what I meant to convey, if I don't know, I can't play it back and, right now, but what I meant to convey is that I do have responsibility as supervisor for enforcement.
No, you do not. If you can cite the statute, then I will buy into it, but I don't see it in the statute.
Go forward with your comment.
Okay, so that is, I want that corrected. If he can't back it up, you can't say you have statutory responsibilities. I want to talk about GCSI. Joyce, I want to caution you on this. Mr. Hathaway has been in office for over 2 years. During that time, he communicated with Kirk Profit and never once brought any information to this board. Never once. Apparently, he's still talking to him because he made reference to that. I don't think he should be involved with this because he's proven that he does not tell this board what he's doing. He set those priorities. This board never set any priorities, and I think he really liked it. He was a big shot with a lobbying firm, and he thought he had an avenue into Lansing. So I would hope this board would change that relationship and recognize that he does these things behind the scenes, and he's not going to stop until you tell him to stop. Okay, I want to talk about the public hearing. I have been to a number of public hearings in this very room, and this one was completely different. Every one I've been to, You allowed the public to ask questions and they got answers. You didn't give them any answers. You didn't give them a chance to get answers. You put the chief in a horrible position. You could have cleared up some of that confusion fairly simply if you had followed the standard process for public hearings. So again, the moderator fails and tells people you get 5 minutes, no answers. That is horrible. You have set that up for absolute failure, Mr. Heffley.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Is there anyone else participating remotely who would like to comment?
Jonathan, your hand's still up. I didn't know if you had something else you wanted to say or not. Okay. Rob Pattinson, you're next.
In Scio Township. So the last speaker at the public hearing had something very important to say. And that is, he reflected how distrust is the very first thing that happens when your leaders don't behave with honor and integrity. And it highlights how important honor and integrity is in this township. That because people didn't trust that this board was doing something rationally and fair, they assumed the worst. And that shows how Supervisor Hathaway, your leadership has not been one of honor and integrity, and you have a long way to go to earn the trust of township residents. Manager Parker. Supervisor Hathaway is a very effective speaker, but you have to be very careful of what he says, because very often there is a lot of gaslighting, there's a lot of deception, there's a lot of manipulation. Over the past 2 years, he's been caught several times in these manipulations. And that's why this township is in such a mess. So you're going to have to be very careful how you deal with that particular situation. For instance, tonight, in terms of gaslighting, tonight, the supervisor said, oh yeah, we had fines and tickets and boy, we really clamped down on these ordinance breakers for the party barns, and those tickets were $50 each. I believe there was, what, 4 of them, maybe 5. $250 is nothing to the Frutigs. And it did nothing to help the people on Scio Church resolve the noise issue. As front and center as Jonathan's trash issue is right now, the noise issue on Scio Church has been going on for 15 years. And this board has failed at every turn to protect the residents on Scio Church Road. And until somebody steps forward, Joyce, I am praying that is you, steps forward and starts to really put pressure on the Frutigs. They're going to continue to make noise at midnight on Friday and Saturday night. And the people on Scio Church have absolutely no one to call at that hour. So that's another aspect of this enforcement issue that you need to consider, is who do you call on a weekend at midnight when the Frutigs are blaring the music. Also tonight, work sessions were suggested. We still haven't had any work sessions. I highly recommend that you finally do some work sessions for all of this stuff so that we're not sitting here at 10:40 at night. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Rob.
Next up is Paula Gloverson, followed by Pat Stein. Paula, go ahead.
I'm unmuted. Sorry, my finger wasn't working properly.
Hi, Paula.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Okay, I just want to thank John Reiser for being on the Planning Commission and all your work, because there was a lot of stuff about utilities. I was unable to do Zoom last night, or I wanted to attend in person. So front and center, one of the priorities I think people need to start thinking about, other than pathway down Z Road, is utilities.
Mm-hmm.
And utilities are going to be paramount. That should be, to me, number one priority. We have utilities that cost more than Santa Barbara, California. And then I want to welcome Miss Parker. And actually, I bought your house from you. Never met you, but I'm looking forward to seeing how you. And I really agree with the ordinances because, as you all know, I had a horrific car accident that they had a study for 3 years. And I think I forget his name all the time because I don't want to remember it. The last, not Mr. Rowley, but the other administrator manager. And Kelly was his last name. And when Washtenaw County Road Commission has a 3-year study knowing that there was a light, I'm not sure why we didn't put pressure on Myers. It's just like Myers has all these outlot buildings and you talk about trash. Now, recently I've written them in a survey 3 times about that they need more trash cans. And the same thing with the bus stops. And nobody's figured out where the people at the bus stop, because you have that big cement thing that the DDA talks about, oh, maybe we should have it lighted or whatever. I just go, let's not have trash when you go, welcome to Scio, and there's just like multiple trash blowing around. But I know the utilities director quit or retires, but we really need to work on this utilities issue. And to me, that's priority number 1. Thank you so much. And Jillian, thank you for your work on the RAC. I think it's a lot to bite off. The bus situation rolled into your committee, but see what they can do with Jeff Human.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Pat Stein, go ahead, please.
Good evening, and Pat Stein, longtime resident of Scio Township. I first want to welcome you, Manager Parker. It's good to see you there tonight, but during a public hearing, no less. Really getting a feel for how the residents feel about our township. Moving on, I want to touch on something Kathleen Brandt brought up about how we really don't know what the supervisor does. There are usually never any, I shouldn't say usually never, there are never any written reports submitted, and very seldom do we get an oral report on what the supervisor is working on. I think the last time we had anything in writing was in the meeting minutes from the Dexter mayor, who was in a meeting with Supervisor Hathaway regarding the Sloan Kingsley property. Now I understood that there was a report that you were submitting tonight that didn't make it to the pack with Supervisor Hathaway. Is that correct?
That's correct. It will be in the packet eventually.
I'll post it tomorrow.
So has anyone at the table tonight received a copy of this report?
Yes.
Everyone did get a hard copy.
Okay, so where will we find it posted, Clerk Flintoff?
Pat, I'll add it to the packet, the meeting packet under reports.
So we will see that then until the minutes?
No, tomorrow. I'll put it in the agenda packet. For example, tonight under the item reports, H1 reports, it'll be an additional attachment under there.
Do we have John's?
Thank you very much.
Good.
But in my opinion, Supervisor Hathaway, the fact that the public does not get to see the report before tonight's meeting, that does not count as submitting a report as we requested. Please do better. Thank you all very much and good night.
Thank you, Pat.
David Reed, go ahead, please.
Yep. David Reed, Scio Township. Just a word of support for our retired enforcement officer, Ralph Scio, I think it was. He used to, when I was on the board, we actually got quarterly reports. Donna, you probably remember this. We got quarterly reports from him with pictures of the violations, summary of the issues, and summary of the conversations with the violators. And most of the time these issues were resolved. So he used to do his job. And I'm not sure why he stopped. I'm not sure if Carlisle Wortman told him to draw back or Spalding told him to cut back. I'm not sure. But, well, no, he retired long after we stopped getting reports. But I want to follow up on Kathleen's comments. As I recall from my days before the hearing, I recall that we would answer these public's questions either at the meeting or commit to answering them in writing at the next meeting, or possibly posting on the website in the most recent years. This board did neither. And most disturbing, and to your detriment, the fact that this board didn't even give the Chief Hood the opportunity and the respect to respond to the community. That was disgraceful. This was a waste of a public hearing. You wasted your time, you wasted the public's time, and most importantly, you put the passage of this desperately needed millage in jeopardy. You need to fix this failure to communicate, and you need to fix it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
I see no other hands raised at this time.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Well, I have one thing to say. Chrissy, I wanted to make sure that, I brought up about the training, that we're not, it had nothing to do with you, because I know you're gonna stay, and we're not gonna let you leave anyway, so.
I got something to show you guys.
Okay, just to be clear.
Can I make one comment, Will, before we?
Sure.
Is it okay, just for 3 minutes? So I totally agree. There was definitely, I wouldn't call it failure to communicate, it's failure to start, actually. And I'd like to do is lay out what I think would be because I've done these types of presentations before to my board where, hey, I need $10 million or whatever. How do I get the 10 million bucks? So what I can do is lay out for the board what I would expect in a packet. Frequently asked questions, an executive summary, a table of contents that goes into details of each subject that somebody may be interested in, actual statistics, cost benefit analysis, ROI, those kinds of things. At least give the board a framework that we can fill out and populate that I think will really alleviate, because they were spot on. I mean, I give us an F, frankly, for coordination and an F for communication. I mean, we blew it, man. We blew it. And we all own it. I own a piece of it too.
I agree. And what I was gonna say before we suddenly recessed was, as the person who sent out the public notice, I wanted to apologize to the community for not including more information. I mean, it all came back. I was trying to follow the legal guidance I'd gotten about not influencing and putting too much information in, but I should have, gotten that. I will also say that what I think the good news is, it's a failure to communicate. It's not a failure to have done the analysis and all of the good work that we did in 2022. That Fire Services Guidance Committee was the best informed committee I've ever seen Scio do. We had a special meeting in January. We moved forward, but the chief needs assistance. Terry has done a great job on the website, but I hope that, later this week, the chief, Joyce, me, anybody who can help, I will say, I think we need to have some sort of internal committee or capacity here to help, because there's only so many of us with so many hours in the day. And just what you described, super dupes, but that would be like, right now, that would be like me and Joyce pulling that together, and that's fine.
Everybody can help. Everybody can put a piece.
But everybody's gonna need to jump in to help.
Well, actually, some of this stuff is already underway. I talked with Andy about a frequently asked questions.
It's on the web.
Right, I know, and he's been working on it together with Terry, putting it out there, and
It's in real time.
Part of the plan was to listen to what concerns and questions people brought to this hearing, and continue to roll out more information in response to the questions. We were trying to anticipate, based on the things that had come in via email, what kinds of questions people were, having in response to this. And so it's an ongoing process. I think this, we're learning from this as we go. But I think one of the lessons from this, and this is something that we can't do, I think the clerk pointed out quite accurately, we can't do this ourselves. There needs to be a ballot campaign. And we the board can't organize that. The township can't organize that. So
Because we
people.
don't have the time or we're prohibited.
We're prohibited from doing it. So somebody else has to do it. And I think it's very clear that it's necessary. In some ways, I thought that from what we heard when we were considering putting this on the ballot, I thought that would already be happening. And I was a little surprised to hear that and maybe I'm wrong, but that it hasn't happened.
Yeah, okay.
But it needs to happen, but we just can't do it ourselves.
Well, but we can spend the money. We can provide the facts though, like what you just said is that, we're gonna have the questions and then we're going to add those to our fact list, but they didn't know that. They just walked away after the questions and, oh, what's the township gonna do for us? There was no communication tonight on that process. I was even lost. I thought we were gonna have a discussion after the public hearing like we normally do, and there wasn't any.
Well, I didn't know the process, but David reads spot on. I mean, why didn't we have an interaction with these folks? I didn't know, maybe because I just thought this was the process, so I wasn't quite sure.
Well, we were having a lot of attrition of people from the audience as the public hearing went on, as the residents went on. And there was a call for a break, which we took. I think it was, there was a question I suppose we could have considered, should we take time before a break to have some dialogue or some response? We didn't. We didn't add. Okay, thank you, Kathleen. But I think there's a lot of lessons to draw from this. That one major one, I think that those who care about this revenue proposal should take from this is that there needs to be a ballot campaign committee that's working on this. We can't do it, the township can't do it.
I agree with you.
A lot of lessons learned,
But
a lot of lessons
But
learned.
I want to hear from Joyce because I think she's had a lot of experience.
Just a couple of comments. I think it was really beneficial to hear from the public. And I think they were spot on with a number of their concerns. And we need to take that information, kind of reevaluate what we're doing. And the other thing, recognizing that the interaction didn't happen tonight, there isn't any reason why we can't actually go out and meet the residents where they're at, and with a series of meetings, not necessarily just one public hearing. We can have informational meetings and really sit down and talk about the issues and what their concerns are. But I think the information we got tonight was really valuable as far as laying out some type of a strategy or plan to get out in the community, to engage the community, to address their concerns, and to bring back recommendations if we need to make any adjustments. So that's what I was thinking.
I agree. And I do want to say, I want to recognize Terry and the chief, Mary, everybody who's worked on it, because that QR code and that website, make that your friend. Send it to everybody you know. Talk about if you want to stay up to date. We can even add on a little, sign up for updates, email sign up on that thing. But it's sciotownship.org/fire.
Well, or, hey, we were talking about doing microsites, right? This might be the opportunity for our IT guy to get his hands wet. I'd gladly help him or have him.
We just have to be careful not to cross the line into.
Oh, that's right.
The advocacy. So there's things that we can, there's things we can do to put out information, but we have to be careful not to campaign for it.
Right, I got you.
So how do we know, what's the line? I don't want to, I can tell my friends, but I can't as a John Reiser, but not as a trustee.
No, you know about the information. I mean.
You just can't sell it. Here's the information. You can't go, oh, it's the best thing in the.
No, I'm sorry. Actually, I believe as John Reiser or trustee John Reiser, you can say whatever you want. It's a matter of not using public resources.
Oh.
Okay, your free time, saying,
That makes sense.
is not a public resource.
And we could donate to a campaign.
What about
chose to as
At the
individuals.
board, at the table here.
Facts. At the table, it's information analysis, and we did as a board vote to call an election and put this on the ballot. So our position is clear, but we can't, and I certainly, especially as clerk, would never veer into telling people how they should vote. One, as clerk, but two, we also should never, like with the newsletters, the public resources. The chief has done a wonderful job. I think he's done 3 or 4 articles, each time updating people about it, information, but we can't say we really need this to go through.
Got it. Okay.
What's a microsite? What did you call it? A microsite?
Microsite.
So like a site within a website?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
I didn't know
Yeah.
it. That's what it was called.
Yeah. That's what you think it is. It's just a miniature version with very few tabs, very succinct, very to like one kind of point.
Well, are we ready
Call
now?
the
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Moved by Brazeau, support by Riser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye, aye,
aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned.